Oops, sorry, slight technical difficulties there. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to another debate dissection. Let's get this body rolled out and see what's underneath the what is the cause of death for this particular debate in question. Today we're doing the famous and wonderful Bill Nye versus Ken Ham, and just straight up, firstly, get everything out of the way. I do apologize for Ken Ham. Yes, my country produced him. We don't want him back. You can keep him. That's yours now. Yeah, so I remember seeing this debate, and it was kind of one of those landmark debates. It's one of those ones that I remember, and I really wanted to do a sort of modern dissection because this when I saw it, obviously it was before I did reviews and things like that. So it's definitely one that I really wanted to go back and sort of see what I thought of it now, see how it holds up, and see if the arguments are sort of on par with modern arguments. But I do have a couple of wonderful people backstage, so I might get them in, and that is Ember and Dr. Dino. And Ember, I thought you were unavailable. I do apologize. And I wasn't sure if you were showing up, Dr. Dino, so I do apologize for being so disorganized regarding you guys. But how are you? Welcome.
Oh, it's all right. Just came from a film festival. That was a pretty neat trick. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And I just realized I forgot my earbuds, so I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay, so Andy's out of here. Yeah.
The rapidly departing dino.
Yeah, just see the tail end of him off into the distance. Sure, no problem at all. Yeah, he'll come back presumably, and if not, that's okay too.
For sure.
That's okay. Yeah. Just before coming in here, I was watching a Witsit debate, and just oh dear. Oh dear.
I saw it starting up, and I was like, I don't think I can stand to watch Witsit even for just a few minutes before it started.
It's rough. He won't debate me anymore. He's kind of says, "Oh, you're too rude and interrupt." That's not it. He just doesn't want to answer the questions that I give him. He just doesn't want to answer them. So.
You have a nemesis.
Sure.
Well, Witsit does this versus people. As soon as he gets hard questions, like people that give him, for instance, the why don't planes travel a lot slower in the southern hemisphere because there's a longer distance, he just won't talk to them anymore, won't debate them anymore. He just basically turns them off. So that's his sort of answer to it, while accusing everybody around him of being cowards and not one. It's just a game to him. It's just a sort of a little song and dance that he does. I think Witsit is one that just makes money. He just makes a lot of money off fooling people, in my opinion. So yeah, but yeah, that's not the debate we're talking about. So yeah, we're not doing Witsit today. We're doing Bill Nye and Ken Ham, and Ken Ham's frustrating.
Great beefy spaghetti monsters, meatballs, or something. I don't know how to invoke the spaghetti monster properly. I'm bad at my job.
I'm just thinking, do I? Should I do this on YouTube? I'll just do my screen. Actually, that might be a better idea because I have problems with audio on the other one. But I'm glad everybody could join us. Who is out there? I see one of my favorite bugs out there, Caterpillar. Always so good to see. Big Bad Mama, great to see you. Tapioca Weasel, Stephanie, good to see you. I'm glad we sort of had a bit of a comment sort of engagement. I hope you're okay. Bear Air, good to see you. Such wonderful people out there. That's awesome. Carrie, good to see you. Binge Thinker. Wow. Okay, we've got awesome people in the chat. Sapra, fantastic to see you. Orge, great to see you, man. Really good. But I'll get this up. And so, have you guys got anything to share? What's going on your end?
All the things.
All the things.
Yeah.
Well, you've just made 1,000 subscribers, which I want to mention on here, which is just huge news and massive and fantastic. And I don't think I could think of somebody that doesn't deserve it more, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you.
Did I do the passing of that right? Who I can't think of somebody who does deserve it more.
English.
I think I worded that very bad.
The sentiment worked.
But yeah, I've got tomorrow. I've got Peter Tucker or D Tucker, depending on which version of his name you're using, on the Sunday show.
Oh yes,
yep. And it's my first appearance on Aaron Ra's reading Joseph's Myth, and then the week part of next week, the weekdays, I've got a couple of Pride-related videos, and then on Saturday, if I remember correctly, it's the exciting conclusion to Dr. Hugh Ross's The Arguments from Astronomy That Point to an All-Powerful Creator. Finally get to finish off that frickin' series.
Yeah, I've got a couple of anti-Pride videos in the barrel to line up as well, just to sort of call out a couple more people. Because I did that one on what's his name, Dennis Prager, which was kind of fun because I mean they're making a lot of content for people who apparently don't care if people are gay. You know, like, why are you making so much content on something that you don't care about? It's ridiculous. Yeah, I think they're full of it. But
Yar.
I'm going to be editing some things in the background while we do this.
Okay, sure. You do you, buddy.
I'm slowly chopping up Kurt Wise. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
that takes a lot
leave
longer
that
than
out
you
of context.
Yes. Incidentally, the film festival, there was one of my people that I really enjoy who does like trauma makeup to like train EMTs and stuff on.
Right.
And she was doing a demonstration on how to do trauma makeup. So there actually were like chopped up body parts at the film festival.
Right.
Cool.
You were going to say that the Wise was at the film festival. I'm like, wow, that makes it terrible film festival. Okay.
Well, I mean, unrelated, there was a person at the Comic-Con last year who was named Kurt Wise, but not that Kurt Wise.
Right.
At first, when you first mentioned that you were doing Kurt Wise, I was like, he's an apologist too? I thought he was just a D&D nerd.
Few Kurt Wises out there. Well, I think we should get started, and I've got it on 1.5. I might cut 2 times speed and see how that hits us, because I know that Ken Ham sort of is not the fastest speaker, and I don't think Bill Nye is either.
Sorry, just real quick. Speaking of not fast speakers, like this Kurt guy, I have to have him on 2 times speed, or I start having an aneurysm. It's terrible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that there's something to be said for like science presentation, slow speakers, like that can be useful. But I think that when you're reviewing it, just some people, like, I think probably the worst I've ever seen is David McQueen. He speaks at a glacial speed, like he speaks like this, and like you're sitting there going, but not just that, but he also tells anecdotes as well, like just sort of random tidbits from his life that have nothing to do with what you're talking about. And I've got to debate him in like a week or so. So I've got to sort of, I'm going to have to prepare for that. I think that some part of me thinks that maybe he does it on purpose because he wants to just, not get into the nitty gritty of what he's talking. He doesn't want to talk the nitty gritty, so he's just sort of
probably.
On a somewhat related note pertaining to your own personal debates, the Book of Mormon debate came up in a couple of other streams pre-show, and everybody was like all excited for it, getting to watch you whip out the submarines and all the other nonsense. And then Kyle what was that?
Look, this was all discussed in the art, and I was really excited for that, and I wanted to hear. I wanted to have a good engagement with somebody that's Mormon to hear why they believe it. And and here's the thing: like, I don't mind if you believe it. It's not a science book. That's the thing. That's the only contention that I make. But it seemed to be he was just using a definition that he liked to sort of play semantic games. And an article that he found that he said was a peer-reviewed paper. It wasn't a peer-reviewed paper. It was just an opinion piece in a science journal kind of thing. So it didn't have a DOI, like a digital object identifier that you would use to track a thing. It was written in the I think this, I think that way kind of thing. Like it was literally an opinion piece that he thought was a paper because it was from a journal. Like it journals can have opinion pieces in it, and literally the thing was called Point of View. It's
Wow.
just and so this one article he thought just proved that. I got a super chat from Sinister Porpoise, thank you. Hitchhiker's Guide is scientific as Lord of the Rings. Well, a couple of people pointed out, and rightly so, it's a good question, what books are not scientific? And I thought, and that sort of occurred to me afterwards, and I'm like, I wish I asked that a couple of other people pointed out as well. And if his definition of scientific held, there would be no books that are unscientific, right?
Yeah.
So that would just take all the meaning away from a scientific book, because there is no unscientific books, which was a good point by somebody in the comments. And I really should find out who that is, but I'm not going to because I'm lazy. But it did occur to me as well. And plus, like I said to somebody, I'm going to eat my dinner scientifically, because if a systematic thing is all that's required, and I cook my dinner, I put together a salad, that is now a scientific salad because it's systematic. Like, what are we even talking about at that point? It's just, I think, because I went over this in my head because that's the kind of sort of neurotic kind of stuff that I do. And then I sort of had a conversation on Discord with Carl where I was trying to explain that we can't absolutely know anything, or very little. Cats eat food. You don't absolutely know that. You're relying on your senses. Your senses could be wrong. Like the whole deal. And I thought he just wants to devalidate science. You know what I mean? Like he just wants to say science is meaningless. Like, let's burn the house down.
Yeah.
So that's why. But thank you, Sinister Porpoise. I really appreciate it. Two Americana dollars is awesome. Thank you. So I think I might get this started. So sorry for the delay, everybody. I just
oh, it's all good. We tangented, which is what we do.
I know. It's just I want to not be disappointed, but I just slightly am. Like I want to say, hey, it is what it is. This happens in debate. All of those rational things we tell ourselves, and there's that piece of me that said, oh, it could have been so much more engaging and better, and it was terrible for the audience. Nobody wants to watch a definition debate.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because you saved me some money on us sending a super chat to say so.
Nobody wants to see two people argue about the meaning of a word, one word. It's just anyway, okay, it is what it is. Moving on. Next debate will be better,
Hopefully.
Heads up. Oh, come on, it's McQueen. Let's face it.
He may talk slow, but he'll fight.
Yeah, and he's funny. Let's face it, he is funny. So I'll get this started, and we're starting with Ken Ham, who, again, I am sorry, my country apologizes, but no, we do not want him back. You can keep him. So Ken Ham's an interesting figure. He sort of came up in the evangelical scene in Australia, and then sort of moved to the US, and he had a strategy. I believe his background was it economics? I think was his background when I was looking him up.
Truth be told, I don't know much about him.
Yeah, I thought he was like an analyst or something, and he was helping the various churches try to reach more people or reach the youth or whatever. And he was like, no, we need to go much bigger than this. And that's what kind of got AIG started.
Oh, he was an educator, like Christian educator, but he has a bachelor's degree in applied science with an emphasis on environmental biology, which is crazy. It's just, I'd love to know where he got what is Queensland Institute of Technology and the University of Queensland for his DipEd. They must be so embarrassed. So Queensland, if you don't know, and I'm looking at you, Beamsy, Queensland is like the Florida of Australia. Like, really, it is the Florida of Australia.
It's that bad.
Well, the Gold Coast is where they have all the theme parks and stuff. So that's where the Sea World is. That's where the Dream World is. That's where your theme parks are. It's got a lot of it's like hot, it's muggy, and if something just ridiculous, like there's the thing about Florida Man, that's where it will come from in Australia. That's where that will happen, kind of thing. So that's Queensland. I apologize to all of the Queenslanders out there. Yeah, WA is a lot like Texas, if you want to know where I am. Well, it's like Texas in the fact that like it's big, it's hot, it's dry. The people want to secede all the time.
It is like Texas.
Right. We kind of are off doing our own thing. Don't care about what the rest of the country's doing kind of thing and say, screw you, rest of the country, we're doing our own thing. So... yeah, and Big Bad Mama, yeah, Queensland is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. The Daintree rainforest is gorgeous. Totally with you there. The people are Floridians, basically, in mentality. So yeah, that's where it's at, Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Okay. But I'll get this started, and we can get going.
Is the man behind the popular high-tech creation museum where we're holding this debate? He's only had 2 million visitors.
So this was at the Creation Museum, right? I think that's a little bit fast. I can barely hear that guy. I do apologize.
6 years and has attracted much of the world's media. The Answers in Genesis website is well trafficked with 2 million visitors alone last month. Mr. Ham is also a best-selling author, a much-in-demand speaker, and the host of a daily radio feature carried on 700-plus stations. This is his second public debate on evolution and creation. The first was at Harvard in the 1990s. Mr. Ham is a native of Australia. He earned a bachelor's degree in applied science with an...
That's a long time between debates, right? Like, yeah.
Little bit.
Just saying.
This is environmental biology from the Queensland Institute of Technology, as well as a diploma of education at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. And now, Mr. Ham, you opted to go first, so you will be first with your 5-minute opening statement.
Well, good evening. I know that not everyone watching this debate will necessarily agree with what I have to say, but I'm an Aussie and live over here in America, and they tell me I have an accent, and so it doesn't matter what I say. Some people tell me we just like to hear saying it. So I hope you enjoy me saying it.
And there is the obligatory joke. Well done, sir. Well done.
Anyway, well, the topic is this: is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era? When this was first announced on the internet, there were lots of statements like this one from the Richard Dawkins Foundation: scientists should not debate creationists, period. And this one from one of the discovery.com websites: should scientists debate creationists? Right here, I believe there's a gross misrepresentation in our culture. We're seeing people in being indoctrinated to believe that creationists can't be scientists. I believe it's all a part of secularists hijacking the word science. I want you to meet a modern day scientist who is a biblical creationist.
So yeah, the secularists, like, does he ever actually define that?
I bet you damn naturalists think that you can figure stuff out by naturalistic processes and like physics and such.
Well, yeah, it's like I know what he probably means, but
yeah,
define your terms, man.
I think that what they're saying when they're sort of saying scientists is people engaged in the scientific process kind of thing. Because that's what creationists aren't involved with, because they don't go through peer review. They're not out there doing experiments and things. They're not working in labs.
Well, the bitch of it is some of them do. Like Behe, for example. He is an actual working scientist with like actual peer-reviewed papers. Yeah, and he does his creationism stuff as like an aside and draws on his real-world credibility to make his creationism sound more plausible. So he's kind of a dick that way. But he is a real scientist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. So, but I mean, if you're going to put it in the title, I mean, you're probably not going to say, hey, should mainstream scientists... I mean, maybe that title would be more accurate. So do you kind of agree with him that it should be mainstream scientists instead of just should scientists?
No, absolutely not. I think a person's theology should be entirely separate from their scientific practices.
Agreed.
Yeah.
If there's a conflict, they're going to have to take that up with either a therapist or a pastor or however they want to resolve that. But they can't be bringing the theological baggage into the lab.
Right. So I think so. He's basically saying, hey, you can... I think he's trying to smuggle creationism into science. Like he wants to say, hey, you can start from a creationist point of view, which science precludes that. It says you cannot start with the supernatural things or things outside the natural world in order to do science.
We can
presumably
go
you can
even
end
further.
up there.
Like he likes to paint it as a false dichotomy. Like either you start with creationist assumptions or you start with naturalistic assumptions. But in reality, science tries to not start with any assumptions. Like we have to have certain presuppositions, math works, logic works, etc. But you don't start with any conclusion in particular. You follow where the evidence leads you.
Right, but you do have to start with a naturalism point of view. You do have to go, well, we're only going to look at the natural world around us, not any sort of... for instance, it doesn't just sort of preclude the supernatural. It precludes feelings. It precludes things like dreams. It precludes anything... Like the empiricism is the important part, right?
Flashes of intuition are not evidence.
Right. So that's the nature of science. That's not science's fault. It's just that's the way we do science. If you're over here going, well, I'm going to use my dreams as a starting point, that's great, but you're doing something other than science. That's fine. So it doesn't just preclude supernatural. It precludes information gathered by anything other than empiricism and the natural world. So, what do you mean it precludes dreams? Well, you can't gather information from your dreams. Like, I understand you can sort of analyze, certain parts of dreams, Tapioca Weasel, but you're not going to say, hey, well, I saw a unicorn in my dreams, so I'm going to investigate that.
Oh, I see. It's as a point of inspiration. And yeah, Dr. T, you're absolutely correct. I myself have solved a number of problems in my own life by inspiration from a dream. I had a dream, I woke up, and I'm like, that might be a solution. I investigated it, and it worked out. Not always.
I think you're splitting little weasel hairs there, Tapioca Weasel. Like you're really splitting hairs to what I'm trying to say. Like, seriously.
My name is Stuart Burgess. I'm a professor of engineering design at Bristol University in the UK.
Whoa.
My name is Stuart Burgess. I'm a professor of engineering design at Bristol University in the UK. I've published over 130 scientific papers on the science of design in engineering and biological systems. From my research work, I have found that the scientific evidence fully supports creationism as the best explanation to origins. I've also designed major parts of spacecraft launched by ESA and NASA.
So here's a biblical creationist.
Yeah, so Here's the problem. That isn't your field. You're an engineer, not an origin of life person.
Yeah. It'd be like
why
me saying I'm great at building patios, so here's my opinion on your skyscraper.
Yeah.
My work does not qualify me at all to have an opinion on that.
Right. Or I work in computers. Here's where I think the universe came from. I mean, yes, I can have an opinion on that, but it is not, I am not like giving a scientific expertise. Like I would never claim that is a scientific, I am speaking from some sort of authority on that. That is not what I'm trained in. That's the thing. Like, come on, dude. Just because you've got a PhD doesn't mean that you have any credibility on a subject. You're an engineer, sir. Why are you commenting on the origin of everything?
Who's a scientist who's also...
And you can comment on the... don't get me wrong. I don't want you to think I'm misspeaking. You can comment all you want, but you're trying to use your authority of having a PhD in engineering and mathematics to say, hey, my opinion has weight. And that's not how it works. Like, not even somebody who does have a PhD in the field, they don't just fly on that PhD. They have to produce work that shows it. So this is just trying to smuggle in creationism to front load science with creationism, which is what they do all the time.
I wonder if it's more subtle than that even. After all, Bill Nye occasionally gets a little flamed because he's only a master of engineering. He's not a PhD. Whereas this dude was a PhD of engineering. I wonder if Ken chose the field of that particular scientist in order to symbolically pull rank on Nye. Like, this dude does what you do, but he's higher level. And he's on my side.
Maybe. But I think he's got a few more people. Hold on.
An inventor. And I want young people to understand that. You know, the problem, I believe, is this. We need to define terms correctly. We need to define creation.
Nobody is saying that people who believe in God can't be inventors or, you know, engineers or anything like it. That's the thing. Like you say, there's got to be a separation between what you personally believe and what you can scientifically demonstrate. And that is where they're trying to blur the line. Like they're trying, it's an argument from authority. Like this guy's got a PhD. His opinions on, you know, what he believes should be given weight. No. In science, it doesn't matter what you personally believe. It doesn't matter. It matters what you can scientifically demonstrate. Is creation a viable model of origins, creation, evolution in today's modern scientific era? No, it is not. There you go. Short answer for you. Mm-hmm. Is it a viable model? Not at the moment. Is it a viable hypothesis? No.
I'm like, what has it ever been a viable model as in a cohesive and internally coherent model?
Okay, so let's be fair. It could be a viable model, right? But it's a long way to go before you get to that. First, it's got to be a viable hypothesis, which means that it has to be falsifiable. That's your first hurdle. How do we falsify this hypothesis? Because without being falsifiable, it's not even really a hypothesis, right? It's an unfalsifiable belief is what it is. You know, that's just the case of it. If you can't falsify it, it's not a valid hypothesis. So how do we falsify it? As long as you can jump that, as long as you can provide a working scientific background of how everything works in it. So you would have to understand how God breathed life into the ashes or whatever, dust or whatever, to make humans, and how the God being could do the Big Bang. It could be a model. Like, I can't say that creationists will never understand that. But until it overcomes these hurdles, it's pointless even calling it a hypothesis.
Evolution in regard to origins, and we need to define science. And in this opening statement, I want to concentrate on dealing with the word science. I believe the word science has been hijacked by secularists. Now, what is science? Well, the origin of the word comes from the classical Latin scientia, which means to know.
That is a genetic fallacy. Straight off the bat, he goes with a genetic fallacy. Just because the origin comes from somewhere doesn't mean that's what it means now. That is wrong, sir. I feel like I'm listening to Kyle again. I'm sorry. I feel like, you know, it's
a definition flashback.
Right. And so like, it's okay to define your terms, that's fine, but when somebody is sort of defining them in such a way to, like, there's normative definitions, and then there's sort of, you know, like I was pointing out with Kyle, he did the fourth definition down that was more like a metaphor or a you know, sort of, you know, when you say, hey, I examined this pen scientifically, you know, like you're using it as a metaphor to say systematically kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's very disingenuous to sort of take these definitions and say, hey, because that's why dictionary definitions are bad, because sometimes they're used in a sort of a very liberal way, you know. Yeah. Ugh.
And if you look up a dictionary, it'll say science means state of knowing, knowledge, but there's different.
Oh, he skipped past that fast.
Mm-hmm. He can really go when he has a mind to.
When he has a mind to.
Knowledge, but there's different types of knowledge. And I believe this is where the confusion lies. Knowledge, but there's different types of knowledge. And I believe this is where
God damn it.
Curses.
State of knowing. Knowing as... So that is not the definition of science, right? Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary.
Yeah,
I want to fact check that. Because that is not the definition of science.
Yeah, because you can't say, like, I used to be ignorant, but now I'm science. That doesn't make any damn sense.
Oh, wow.
Although, I kind of, given that it's Pride Month, I kind of want a pronouns pin that also has science on it now.
Okay, so this is the fifth definition now down, right? So this is sort of, as the way that dictionaries work, they sort of go from the most, they go from the most specific to the least specific kind of thing. Right. So, for instance, the third one down is a system of method of reconciling practical ends with scientific laws. Cooking is both a science and an art, right? Nobody in science, we never refer to cooking as a science, right? That is using a metaphor.
Food science.
Well, is that cooking or is it like nutrition science?
I get what you're saying.
Okay. So the reason why they give phrases is because if you hear this usage, that's the usage. So if somebody says cooking is both a science and an art, they're not trying to say that cooking is literally a science, right? If you heard that in everyday sort of conversation, you would say, okay, they're just being hyperbolic, basically, right? This is the problem with dictionary definitions. Like, for instance, definition 2. 2b, something such as a sport or technique that may be studied or learned, like systemized knowledge. Have it down to a science, right? You're not actually saying that cricket is a science, right? You're saying that they have it down to a systemized sort of system. This is the problem with dictionary definitions. It's giving you usage. It's not telling you what it is. And that's what I was trying to point out to Kyle.
Stuff. A lot of
hyperbole.
Stuff.
Yes. So if this is not dictionaries don't give technical definitions. They give everyday usage. Okay, that's important to understand. But as I was sort of saying to the Mormon I debated, look, they're not prescriptive. They don't determine what words are. And he seemed to think the dictionary determined what a word meant. That is not true.
Well,
they describe
a book thumping person. That's kind of to be expected because they think it's ingrained in the mentality to say that once something is written on paper in black and white, it is prescriptive. The world has to bend to back up what's written.
Yeah, and do you see how he put 1 here? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to point out this dishonesty. It's not definition 1. It's definition 5.
Well, details.
Yeah.
Knowledge.
I mean, what's a couple of numbers between friends?
It's a little bit dishonest, and that's what I was pointing out to Kai. It's dishonest to do that.
This is where the confusion lies. There's experimental or observational science, as we call it. That's using the scientific method, observation, measurement, experiment, testing. That's
the definition of science. There's no observational science. There's just science. Like that. That's it. That is the technical definition. That is what scientists will say science is. There's no observational science.
There is observation in science, but there is no observational science.
Right. There's many methods of science. There's scientific methods, plural. There's multiple ways of doing it, all with the same base level foundation of the scientific methods. But there's no difference between sort of using methods in observational science and methods in, what do you call it? I've forgotten now.
Historical.
It is.
And our research.
Oh, sorry. Right.
Knowledge, but there's different types of knowledge, and I believe this is where the confusion lies. There's experimental or observational science, as we call it. That's using the scientific method, observation, measurement, experiment, testing. That's what produces our technology, computers, spacecraft, jet planes, smoke detectors, looking at DNA, antibiotics, medicines and vaccines. You see, all scientists, whether creationists or evolutionists, actually have the same observational or experimental science. And it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist, you can be a great scientist. For instance, here's an atheist who was a great scientist, Craig Venter, one of the first researchers to sequence.
Yeah, that's true. We all have access to science, but there's no historical science.
Human genome. Or Dr. Raymond Damadian. He is a man who invented the MRI scanner and revolutionized medicine. He's a biblical creationist. But I want us to also understand molecules to man evolution belief has nothing to do with developing technology. You see, when we're talking
molecules to man evolution belief. So this is just sort of Kent Hovind's, evolution is everything from the sort of beginning of the universe to, the up to today.
Yeah,
right?
everything is evolution.
Right. So when you have creation versus evolution, I think that most people, or most honest people, understand that you're talking about the creation account of, the animals and stuff from a creator to explain the diversity of life, or evolution to explain the diversity of life. I think that most people would understand that.
Yeah, and Ken is 100% wrong about whether it matters, because it as came up in that debate with Jen and T-Rock. There are things in our real world everyday lives, like Ken Ham even showed flu shots. If you don't accept evolution as a real thing, then getting the next batch of flu shots out isn't a possible thing for you to do.
Right.
And I am a little curious now. What was Ken's stance on the COVID vaccine, if anyone knows?
I don't know if he ever brought it up. He may have recused himself on that one.
It doesn't say anything in Wikipedia about it. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I wouldn't like to sort of misrepresent the man.
Yeah. It's just after the last few years, I wonder if his stance has changed.
I don't know. I wonder because I know Prager spoke out about it, and he was on the Intervictin bandwagon kind of thing. And then sort of pointed out how Sweden didn't give out vaccines and they were doing fine. And then Sweden had the highest death rate of any country, and sort of rapidly went back on their stance. So, yeah. I just love how this picture is like as cartoonish as possible, and it still looks more realistic than their one.
Yeah.
About origins, we're talking about the past. We're talking about our origins. We weren't there. You can't observe that, whether it's molecules to man evolution or whether it's a creation account.
You can't observe it. You can observe the past. You can observe the effects of the past. Like, not directly. Nobody can directly observe the past, but you can observe the effects.
Well, in a certain respect, you can. As you know, astronomy looks backwards in time, not just across space. We can't do anything but observe the past because of the way light cones work and such.
Also,
I'm sorry, Stephanie. I'm so sorry to hear that. But we don't want to violate YouTube's terms of service, so we probably won't touch too much on that. But I'm so sorry. It's a shame.
Sorry, just to what you guys were saying there. Hashtag the rocks were there.
Hashtag the rocks were there. Is this something I should know?
I feel like I should know that reference, but it's not coming to
book.
me.
I forget who wrote it, but it's a really, really good phrase.
Okay,
That's
so the rocks are indicative of okay.
Oh, straight
Us geologists are like,
oh, it's a Jackson Wheat book, of course. I've seen the ad for it like a couple of times a week for months now. Wow.
Oh.
It's just like the rocks were there, and they hold records of what happened to them. And
well, like I said, we can see the effects, and the rocks definitely hold a sort of a story about what has happened in our past, because the effects that have happened in the world are imprinted on them.
Yep. By the way, the rocks do not say there was a global flood. Just I gotta say.
For real. Yeah, as far as I can tell, AIG never took a stand one way or another about the vaccine. They just wrote a whole bunch of articles about, like, well, we know God didn't make this virus, so who did? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least they're not sort of giving out that that medical misinformation kind of thing. I do know people that died in the pandemic. Not personally, but I know people that had family, and my heart goes out to them. It was very sad. So I really, I want to be careful though that we're not dwelling too much on this.
Yar.
You're talking about the past. We like to call that origins or historical science, knowledge concerning the past.
Yeah, you like to. It doesn't mean it is. Like, it's just science, man. Like, there's no difference. Come on. And I noticed that they hate Lucy. Why don't, like, it's really weird because Lucy isn't even the best fossil of Australopithecus we have. It's not the best. Like, why don't they ever show Littlefoot? Is that because Littlefoot would be almost complete?
And yet they pick on Lucy. If you know anything about vertebrate biology, you can tell a lot from the little bit we have.
Yes, but there's hundreds and hundreds of these fossils, so yeah.
Yeah, put them all together, and what do you get? Something that is fully intermediate between a human and a chimp, basically.
Yeah.
Here at the Creation Museum, we make no apology about the fact that our origins or historical science actually is based upon the biblical account of origins.
Why? Well, why? I don't get that. Yeah. Sorry, I just don't get why. Like, why you would start with the answer. Like, you're saying, where does this come from? Or how did we get here? And you're saying, hey, I'm going to front load it with this belief. I don't understand why. It's strange, right?
Yeah, like, present your methodology and show that it works. Don't just start declaring at us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you research science textbooks being used in public schools, what we found is this. By and large, the origins or historical science is based upon man's ideas about the past, for instance, the ideas of Darwin. And our research has found that...
Oh, look, we've come a long way since Darwin. Like, seriously, Darwin had an idea, and he didn't know how it worked. He didn't know a lot about it. He didn't know tons. He had an idea. But Darwin is it's their bugbear, really. He's like Darwin's the, horrible person. It's like, well, not really.
Yeah, he's the Jesus of evolution. Well, no, he's the Adam of evolution, and Richard Dawkins is the Jesus of evolution.
I'm not sure I even agree with everything that Dawkins says, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely
Dawkins
not.
Has some opinions about some fields which he probably shouldn't be throwing his hat into, but, whatever. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism. No, that's not arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. Science is methodological naturalism. Like, this is the thing. Like, it isn't like we've just gone, well, science is this thing because we want it to be this thing. That is how it developed. It developed from who were the people first doing science? What were they called? They were called naturists, I think. No, naturalists, I think. Naturalists, thank you.
Naturalists, yeah.
Yes, so this is where science came from. It came from naturalists before there was scientists who investigated nature. There was, the geology people and the biology people, and some of them used to roam the world and study animals and then shoot them and eat them, kind of thing, because that's what it was like during the time. But this is where science came from, and its development of that into methodological naturalism. That is what science is.
Yeah, but like science as a whole is a process of figuring out what works and what doesn't, and why what works.
Yeah,
and
I think
nothing supernatural has been substantiated. If it did, we would use it. It would become a part of science.
But it's like with the Enlightenment, there was this split between naturalism and natural investigation, and sort of theism and sort of religious institutions. And you could be religious. Most naturalists were actually religious, right? They just went, well, our investigation into the natural should only include the natural, and that's it. That's fine, right? And so it's had this split. And one of these two methods worked incredibly well, right? One of these methods produced insane results. And so we kept with that method. Instead of using theism and our beliefs in it, we kept to that naturalist methodology. And that worked insanely well. And now that it's been so successful that our lives have been transformed, our world has been transformed, they want to say, well, we want back in. No, you don't get to go back in. You know, your method doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so, you know, you're sort of blaming the method that works, that you're not allowed back into it. Because when you use what you're asking us to use, it doesn't work.
Yeah, which is why they have to ask to be let back in rather than just use their own method off on their own, because it doesn't produce any results when they do it off on their own.
Well, they're kind of trying to say, hey, scientists are hijacking it to exclude us. And it's like, no, it's just that is the way the process was developed. And when you don't keep that process naturalistic, it doesn't work. So, you know, it's kind of this real, you know, the kid not picked for the team because they're absolutely useless, having a dummy spit because he wants on the team. You know, like it's like if you were effective, we'd let you on the team, but you're not effective. And the people that you're saying, oh, they believe in this too, they're only effective when they leave those beliefs at the door.
School textbooks are using the same word science, or observational science and historical science. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism and outworld supernatural.
It's not arbitrary. It's a process developed over the last few hundred years. It's not arbitrary.
Yeah, the methodology is part of the method.
Right. You cannot separate the method from methodological naturalism. You can't.
Natural. They present molecules to man evolution as fact. They are imposing, I believe, the religion of naturalism or atheism on.
No, but look, they don't present the molecules to man evolution as fact. No, they don't. They present evolution as fact, which even these guys believe in microevolution, right? Everybody agrees that things change over time. They present man to molecules to man evolution as a theory. Sorry, this is probably going to make me mad.
It's fair. I get a little worked up every time, whether it's Ken Ham or Kent Hovind, whenever they start calling naturalism or even atheism a religion. I'm like, you are deliberately being dishonest. You are trying to poison the well at this point.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And it is not a religion. You can lurk all you want, Caterpillar. You're always welcome to lurk. You know that. So, yeah, absolutely. And sort of, so there's this whole idea that science or what you're doing or evolution is a religion is so wrong. Because, you know what, and I've said it before, I don't care if evolution's wrong.
No, I would love it if evolution's wrong. I would love it, because as soon as we can show that it is, that means we've learned something new and even cooler than that.
I mean,
Joel Hadaway, where is the line between micro and macro evolution? Speciation is usually where they put it, but even speciation is a bit fuzzy in itself. And
I think what Joel is getting at is arbitrary. It's Ken's favorite word. It's arbitrary.
Yeah, I do admit that, and even what is a species is arbitrary. But look, and here's what I've thought about, because I've thought about these debates that I've done. The fact that the line between species is arbitrary doesn't matter to the evolution model. It's not a problem for the evolution model, because evolution says that everything is related. So of course that line can shift depending on whatever, sort of. So the fact that species designations are a gray area isn't a problem for the evolution model, but it's a problem for the creation model, which says everything was created separately. that's a problem. But it's not a problem for the evolutionary model, because the evolutionary model says that, hey, this thing has been continually developing, and we say, hey, that point there, that's where we're going to designate a species, because it's continually developing.
Yeah, and for the record, like those divisions, they do shift and change all the time.
Yeah.
Like, just as we find new information, we change what we think of that information. It's just how it works.
That's the good thing about science. We do change what we think all the time. It's everything's up, and this is the whole thing. When sort of the Mormon Kyle, I think I might go back to calling him Hufflepuff Kyle. He was sort of saying that
he did look like he was in a freaking Harry Potter role.
He does. It's just, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, looking like a Harry Potter character is awesome as far as I'm concerned. But what was I talking about? What was I talking about? This is what I was telling Kyle, that just because we don't prove anything in science, like there's no proofs, and he's like, well, then you don't know any. It's like, no, it's just everything is up to be challenged. Everything is up to be under scrutiny. Everything is up to be corrected. That's a strength of science. It's not a weakness.
Generations of students. You see, I assert that the word science has been hijacked by secularists in teaching evolution to force the religion of naturalism on generations of kids. Secular evolutionists.
Sorry, really
naturalism
quick.
Isn't a religion.
Just Ember, what you just wrote in the chat. If animals or plants came first, wouldn't that depend on what we define as a plant? Because I know the definition of animal is pretty solid.
I suppose, like there are prokaryotes that had plant-like characteristics. In fact, there's a couple of critters that meet the technical definition for both plants and animals at the single cell level. But
some meet the definition for neither as well.
Yeah. So you'd have to get into a much more specialized level of biology than me to really, really pin that down. I'm just repeating what I've heard from Forrest Velkai and others who point out that...
I see what Stephanie's saying.
We had the oxygen crisis, and so animals evolved to exploit that, and then plants evolved after that to exploit the CO2 that the animals were producing, and things.
Well,
so the plants and animals came from the same cell. So there's a few problems in marking what you mean from came from, right? So basically what we're talking about is there was simple prokaryotes, right? So very, very simple cells in general. And these two different plants and animals split off. It doesn't mean that sort of there was one cell and its offspring produced plants and produced animals. What we're saying is that if you go far enough back through these simple prokaryotes before they split off, kind of thing, then it would come back to the same cell. But when you write it comes from the same cell, it suggests, and sort of incorrectly, that there was a whole bunch of prokaryotes, one individual cell produced a plant and produced an animal, and that's not true.
It would have I believe it would have been eukaryotic, but just to put in perspective, we know that dogs came from wolves. Find me the exact dividing line where a wolf became a dog. As you get closer and closer to the original group, it gets a lot harder to distinguish. If you go far back in time, if you go really far back in time, it gets hard to tell base animals from base fungi. And even farther back, it's almost impossible to tell between base animal and base plant. Especially since I think plants can exist as a single cell, whereas animals by definition have to be multicellular, though I could be wrong on that.
Well, I think the main takeaway, Steph, is that when you're thinking of evolution, try to think in terms of population, not individuals. So, when you say came from the same cell, that's really misleading. Really, it's a population of these. You said it was eukaryotes. It was Dr. Dino.
More likely than not, since both plants and animals are eukaryotic.
Yeah, true. So prokaryotes, they developed into eukaryotes. Then sort of one group split off, right? And they weren't plants or animals yet. They were just slightly different eukaryotes. And they developed and they developed and they developed kind of thing. It's like with the prokaryotes, one group split off and they developed into eukaryotes. So instead of thinking about like animals splitting off as one thing, just one individual, it's more a group split off, became isolated from the other group, and then they developed over time into, slowly into, the animal or the plant. Sort of thinking in this way of, there's that cell that gives birth to a plant and an animal. No, that's not how it works at all. Okay, so I hope that sort of clears it up. But yeah.
Life is complicated. It's messy as hell.
Oh yeah, and the further back you go, the more crazy it becomes. Shoot, I just had it. Like the protozoans. For a long time, were classified as animals because of the way they move, but they've since been moved into their own thing. So we moved the classification. It didn't change the nature of the creature.
Porpoise, I tried. I tried. I honestly tried. She's right. I probably should have outlined that more, but I was trying.
No, you did all right.
Yeah.
That all life developed by natural processes from some primordial form, that man is just an evolved animal, which has great bearing on how we view life and death. For instance, as Bill states,
it's very hard to accept for many of us that when you die, it's over.
But you see, the Bible gives a totally different account of origins, of who we are, where we came from, the meaning of life, and our future. That through one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin, but that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
There's a lot of things in life hard to accept. It's hard to accept that you could get a disease, and it's hard to accept that if you cut yourself on rusty something, you could get lockjaw. That's hard to, that sucks.
Yeah, that's a
but it doesn't mean it's not true. It's true. It's got nothing to do with the truth of a statement. Whether it's what he's saying is there are things in life. It sucks. We have to pay taxes. It's a hard thing to accept. You have to accept it. There's a lot of things like that in life. I don't get why that's a contentious statement.
Whoever believes in him should not perish and have everlasting life. So it is creation of.
Yeah, but the whole point is that true?
And what does it have to do with the scientificness of anything?
Well, this I've noticed in debates. They'll say, well, do you want a world where you just die and become nothing? And the answer is no. Of course not.
I don't have a choice.
World where...
Sorry.
Right. Don't you want a world where you'll see all your loved ones after you die? Yes, absolutely. The question isn't whether I want that. The question is that the truth? Like, I don't understand this whole idea of because you want it, then you should believe in it. Maybe as a sort of pragmatism, wandering through life in blissful ignorance, that works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. I will not believe in something false just to make myself feel better.
What if it's like that whole manifesting thing that's been going around the New Age circles lately? Like if you just wish for it hard enough, eventually it might maybe possibly happen.
Oh, The Secret.
It could be.
Yeah, I'm not going to put any stock in that until it can be proven that it works.
Oh, yeah, I am absolutely. I have tested that, and it does not work.
Well, The Secret's kind
Shock
of this
and surprise.
Idea, and I was speaking about this before. The Secret's this idea of, well, if you ask the universe enough for stuff kind of thing and believe it will happen, it will happen. And it's kind of just operating on the principles of sort of self-fulfilled prophecy. and positive reinforcement.
And yeah,
right?
Texas sharpshooter's a big part of that.
Right, exactly. But also it's that positive reinforcement that if you say, hey, I can go do this, I want to go do this will happen, the universe will give me this. It's kind of that positive reinforcement that you can actually do it kind of thing. There's nothing misunderstood about these principles. And self-fulfilled prophecy, that if you're constantly talking about buying a Maserati, when you buy a Maserati, it's not anything supernatural working. It's just you've set yourself up to buy a Maserati. Like it's a very, very bad. And I think Matt Delahunty describes it as if you order a pizza, it's not fate that brought you a pizza. You know, you've self-fulfilled that prophecy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Bible model of origins.
Thanks.
Look, you people make me hungry enough whenever I'm on the stream. Right? Don't even get me started.
I have since learned to eat a big meal before we start a stream.
Scientific era, I say the creation-evolution debate is a conflict between two philosophical worldviews based on two different accounts of origins or science.
Yeah, it is a conflict of two philosophical worldviews. Yes. One's creationism and one's methodological naturalism. It's just the problem is that methodological naturalism works and produces things. And now you want to be countered with the methodological naturalism because you're not producing. Like, what has religion, and this is a really good question that I ask people, what has religion produced applicable to your life in the last 2,000 years?
Crusades, anti-vax movement. Tithes. Oh, lots and lots and lots of legislation that restricts what people can do.
Lots of money. All right, maybe I should phrase that a bit better. What knowledge have we gained in the last 2,000 years about our world, the world around us, from religion?
I mean, well, a lot of science over the past few hundred years, at least, was the result of religious believers who went out with the intention of proving their faith and discovered something else entirely.
Yes, but usually they've used the scientific methods in order to do so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the philosophy of religion rather. Like, religious peoples have contributed significantly. I would be dishonest if I said, hey, religious people haven't contributed to our society or science or any of these structures that we've made. I would be a liar. Like, that is just untrue. Religious people have contributed significantly. We need to acknowledge that. You know, we need to say, hey, people who are religious can contribute, do contribute. Absolutely. But the method that they're using is the scientific method.
Mm-hmm. Nobody's stopping them. In fact, it's more disingenuous for Cunningham to frame it as either evolutionists or creationists, because one of the main reasons for methodological naturalism is so that, like, Christians and Muslims can work together because nobody's depending on any one particular superstition.
Right.
Ken's system would have everybody, basically getting into a fist fight over whose mythology would govern the lab today.
Huh.
Yeah, and funny, whose God is actually
probably
producing.
Cause a lot of pain.
I just have to do one thing.
Yeah. Beamsy, I love you and I hate you. He's making me do things.
Yeah, no, Beamsy, I both love and hate Beamsy as well. No, I just love Beamsy. Beamsy's awesome.
Ooh, fresh sourdough.
And creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era.
Observational science. How is that confirmed? Did you see a God create anything? I love it. I love that they sort of go to, oh, did you ever see anything evolve? It's like, did you ever see a God create anything? I don't understand how that, yeah.
And that is time. I have the unenviable job of being
the
timekeeper.
Well, you see, Mark, they can just say, well, the Bible tells me that he created it, so there's my evidence. That's what they can fall back to.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I've still never seen a squirrel poof into existence. I'm waiting for it.
But that is their historical evidence, right? So they're basically saying, hey, because the book says it, that's historical evidence.
Right, but he's also saying historical evidence is crap. We need present-day observational evidence, or it doesn't count. So bring me a squirrel poofing into existence today that I can observe, and make sure it's repeatable, too.
I can show you that happening in JoJo.
What's a JoJo?
JoJo's Incredible Adventure. I can't remember the name of it.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's an anime / manga series.
Oh, okay.
I knew what you were talking about. I'm with the cool kids. I'll sit over here with the cool kids.
Referee in football that you don't like, but I will periodically, if either one of our debaters runs over on anything, I will stop them in the name of keeping it fair for all. Mr. Ham, thank you for your comments. Now it's Mr. Nye's turn for a 5-minute opening.
I got to say that this was a pretty well moderated debate. Like I've got to say it. Like compared to say the recent one with Professor Dave and Tua, this was pretty well moderated, because that one was a shocker. A shocker.
Yeah.
I don't know who the moderator is, but I like the moderator.
Yeah, I will give AIG credit for this. They have their roles and they do them. Like, I was watching a thing with I forget if it was Ken Ham or another one of the presenters do one of their presentations. I can't even remember the topic at the moment. I was looking at it to see if it was something interesting I might want to do a response to. And the TV's broke. And so they like paused the thing, and the presenter made a couple of jokes about how after Jesus banished Legion just waited around until computers, because the computers are literal demons. But they had a freaking IT guy, and he had it fixed in like 5 minutes. Right. So they're on their game.
I mean, they have money to burn. Might as well use it.
That's true. I mean, the whole money thing is a whole other issue. But they definitely have staff who can get shit done.
Yeah. But that's in sort of comparison to like Kent Hovind, who can't operate his own system, and when something breaks, it's like nobody can fix it, because he's really relying on people who have like literally no idea that what they're doing, like seriously.
That actually brings up kind of an interesting question. What are your two specialties again? Like, what do you do for work?
My field is sort of distributed systems, so networked computers, essentially networks.
And you, Amber?
It's extremely complicated. Simplest way I can put it is let's say film and video.
Okay. How much would they have to pay you for either of you to work for them? Like, say, a yearly salary?
I don't think I could, because I think they have a religious clause. You have to be religious to work for AIG.
Or, that statement of belief thing.
Right.
Which, in a way, is kind of a blessing. Now that you've posed the question.
Do you mean
Doctor,
how much could they offer me for me to pretend to believe? So, like, bribe
works.
me. I don't think there would be an amount that would like
But there has to be some amount.
No. I value my integrity very, very highly. I don't think I would rather be happy than rich. I value my happiness, and so I see my integrity as being integral to my happiness. I am very unhappy sort of pretending to be something I'm not, and fooling people. I like people to know who I am and where I stand, and I might be wrong, but there I stand. Like, that's my opinion. So I don't know. Maybe I'm an idealist. Maybe I take that too literally, but I don't think there's any amount of money that could convince me to pretend to be religious. I don't think I could do it. I think I'd be insanely unhappy.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it successfully. Like, I mean, I in previous incarnations of my existence, I've been an actor, I've been a repo guy, I've done I've even been a car salesman. So like, I've done every possible job that involves being deliberately dishonest. But even so, I don't think I could pretend to be a creationist long. Like, inevitably someone would say something and I'd be like, I can't stand the lies anymore.
Also, Beamsy, you better be happy with this thing. You better. You better.
What the hell is Beamsy up to now?
What's Beamsy
He
up
is
to?
forcing me to change my thumbnail for Monday.
Oh, interesting.
He wants it as cursed as possible, I think.
Okay. Like you do you. Don't like this is the thing. If you're doing YouTube, I think you should do whatever you feel is the best. Like I think that a lot of people try to do what they think people will want, and I think you should do what makes you happy. That's just my personal opinion there.
Oh no, I think it's hilarious. It's just like, you bastard.
Thank you. That's a pleasure to be here. I very much appreciate you
Hey,
including
Bill
me
Nye.
in your facility here.
And Bill Nye's background, yeah, he's an engineer, as you pointed out. He did, sort of science guy on TV, sort of educator. He's mostly an educator, which is weird because these two guys are educators in their background, right? So Bill Nye's a science educator. He's a God educator, basically. But he also, what was his new show? Someone was telling me it was like The End Is Nigh, which I haven't seen, and I have to see that. He did before that Bill Nye Saves the World kind of thing. Yeah, really good stuff. But I think they were sort of very, very even in this debate because they knew how big it was. This was a huge debate, huge.
Now, looking around the room, I think I see just one bow tie. Is that right?
Howdy.
Just one. Why don't you try? Oh, there's, yes, two. That's great.
Sorry, Ember?
Oh, I just randomly, what's the word for it when you just randomly spit out like a syllable or two in reaction?
Grunt?
No, I said how dare, but it's just a random expression. I keep thinking of the way Arthur Conan Doyle phrased it, but I don't like that. There's another way, another term for it, but it's not important.
I like words, right? I love words. There was a book put out by, I think it was Douglas Adams and somebody else. That was, it was basically place names made into words, basically. So they got a whole bunch of towns and sort of cities throughout the world, and they put definitions to the name of the cities. And some of them were fantastic, like just absolutely fantastic. Like I remember that Grimmander, which is a town in Germany, right? Grimmander is the rate at which traffic flows when there's a cop car up front and nobody wants to pass it, right?
Okay.
And there was Fremantle, which is in my state. There's a like town of Fremantle. And Fremantle meant to steal something of little or no value. It made up these words, and I loved it so much. Like it just was awesome. I love made up words, but I mean all words are made up. But I love words that like sort of haven't existed in the dictionaries previously.
Although really quick, I am agreeing with Titan Uranus and Bear Air in the chat.
Hi, Titan.
I would make AIG pay me an arm and a leg, and I would do my absolute best to sabotage them from within.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's a thing. I don't think I'd be very good at that. I'm a guy, I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and I sort of, blurt out what I think all the time. I'm very bad at doing that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm sort of sneaky. Maybe I would be. I don't know. You mean like the way they get scientists into our science and then try to sabotage it from within, doing the exact same thing.
It just doesn't work because their science is crap. So they just get laughed at academia.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
When I was young in high school, my father showed me, his father showed him, and there's a story associated with this, which I find remarkable. My grandfather was in the Rotary, and he attended a convention in Philadelphia. And even in those days, at the turn of the last century, people rented tuxedos. And the tuxedo came with a bow tie, untied bow tie. So he didn't know how to tie it. So wasn't sure what to do. But he just took a chance. He went to the hotel room next door, knocked on the door, excuse me, can you help me tie my tie? And the guy said, sure, lie down on the bed. So my grandfather, he wanted to have the tie on, wasn't sure what he was getting into. So He is said to have lain on the bed, and the guy tied a perfect bow tie knot. And quite reasonably, my grandfather said, thank you. Why'd I have to lie down on the bed? The guy said, I'm an undertaker. That's really the only way.
There's the obligatory joke. Well done, Bill Nye. Well done.
I know how to do it. Now, that story was presented to me as a true story. It may or may not be, but it gives you something to think about, and it's certainly something to remember.
If I may.
So here tonight,
I mentioned before we started that I probably have a bit of critique for Bill.
Yeah.
This is not one of them. Like, is it off the point? Yes.
Sure.
But he knows the audience he's facing, and he's doing his best to endear himself to them. Ken Ham already has the floor because it's his building.
Yeah. Yep.
But most of the people there are going to be against Bill. So it's good to start off with a nice light joke to get them to like him at least a little bit before diving into the science.
Yeah.
So,
as opposed to what Professor Dave does and start calling the audience idiots.
Look, I mean, we've done that one to death. I'm watching his breakdown now. Someone said to watch his breakdown. I'm watching Dave's breakdown now. I understand his frustration, though. I think that when you think the entire room's against you and they're just like, I actually like it when in debates they say, hey, hold your applause till afterwards kind of thing. I think there's no reason to have it during a debate kind of thing. I like the ones that are a bit more structured and sort of, applaud at the end. That's fine. But, I'm not everybody, so.
we're going to have two stories, and we can compare Mr. Ham's story to the story from what I will call the outside, from mainstream science. The question tonight is, does Ken Ham's creation model hold up?
You know what? I can probably speed this up a little bit. Is
it viable? So let me ask you all, what would you be doing if you weren't here tonight? That's right, you'd be home watching CSI. CSI Petersburg. Is it coming? I think it's coming. And on CSI, there is no distinction made between historical science and observational science. These are constructs unique to Mr. Ham. We don't normally have these anywhere in the world except here. Natural laws that applied in the past apply now. That's why they're natural laws. That's why we embrace them. That's how we made all these discoveries that enabled all this remarkable technology. So CSI is a fictional show, but it's based absolutely on real people doing real work. When you go to a crime scene and find evidence, you have clues about the past. And you trust those clues, and you embrace them, and you move forward to convict somebody. Mr. Ham and his followers have this remarkable view of a worldwide flood that somehow influenced everything that we observe in nature. A 500-foot wooden boat, 8 zookeepers for 14,000 individual animals, every land plant in the world underwater for a full year. I ask us all, is that really reasonable? You'll hear a lot about the Grand Canyon, I imagine, also, which is a remarkable place. And it has fossils. And the fossils in the Grand Canyon are found in layers. There's not a single place in the Grand Canyon where the fossils of one type of animal cross over into the fossils of another. In other words, when there's a big flood on the Earth, you would expect drowning animals to swim up to a higher level. Not any one of them did. Not a single one. If you could find evidence of that, my friends, you could change the world. Now, I just want to remind us all, there are billions of people in the world who are deeply religious, who get enriched, who have a wonderful sense of community from their religion. They worship together, they eat together, they live in their communities and enjoy each other's company. Billions of people. But these same people do not embrace the extraordinary view that the Earth is somehow only 6,000 years old. That is unique. And here's my concern. What keeps the United States ahead, what makes the United States a world leader, is our technology, our new ideas, our innovations. If we continue to eschew science, eschew the process, and try to divide science into observational science and historic science, we are not going to move forward. We will not embrace natural laws. We will not make discoveries. We will not invent and innovate and stay ahead.
Yeah, this is a really good point. Like, if you're going to sort of undermine science, you're essentially undermining your technological progress. That's essentially what you're doing. Because it is only science that makes technological process. They want to sort of split it into, oh, well, it's not science that makes technology is different than science. No, it's not.
Yep, it's just applied science. Yeah. We got to have the science first.
And and also just going back to his public speaking for a second, like I'm just listening to this and I can see him slowly transitioning more and more into the actual topic, continuing to keep them liking him while starting to slip in little bits of information to get them to think about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, he is an amazing public speaker, genuinely. Yeah. It's really cool to see.
And he's sort of saying, hey, what's in it for you? Like, this is what you're getting out of science. Do we really want to undermine that? It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
So if you ask me if Ken Ham's creation model is viable, I say no. It is absolutely not viable. So stay with us over the next period, and you can compare my evidence to his. Thank you all very much.
Very nice start by both of our debaters here. And now each one will offer a 30-minute illustrated presentation to fully author their case for us to consider. Mr. Ham, you're up.
Well, that was a
topic is
gap.
the creation of Bible model of origins into
Sorry?
It was just an odd gap between him saying, Mr. Ham, you're on, and then him actually moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
today's modern scientific era. And I made a statement at the end of my opening statement: creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era. And I said, what we need to be doing is actually defining our terms, and particularly three terms: science, creation, and evolution. Now, I discussed the meaning of the word science and what is meant by experimental observational science briefly, and that both creationists and evolutionists can be great scientists.
Yeah, and you did it dishonestly because you said that that was the first definition and it was the fifth, and sort of, really did a dodgy one. Thanks,
well,
Ken.
I mean, he opened with a freaking lie with the whole, creation has been the only one that's been confirmed. Get out of here. It's never been confirmed. Yeah. And, I mean, freaking Islam has a better claim on our religious-based science is confirmed than Ken Ham does.
Right. Yeah, because of the golden age of Islam. Yeah. No, I get you.
Inventor, a biologist, he's an atheist, and he's a great scientist. He was one of the first researchers to sequence the human genome. I also mentioned Dr. Raymond Damadian, who actually invented the MRI scanner. I want you to meet a biblical creationist who is a scientist and inventor.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Damadian. I am a young earth creation scientist and believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour days, just as recorded in the book of Genesis. By God's grace and the devoted prayers of my godly mother-in-law, I invented the MRI scanner in 1969. The idea that scientists who believe the earth is 6,000 years old cannot do real science is simply wrong.
Well, he's most adamant about that.
Yeah, nobody said they couldn't. Nobody said they couldn't do science. It's just like you can't change the scientific principles to include your personal beliefs. Nobody can. Like, I could believe in astrology, but I can't change science to include astrology. That's the thing. Like, this is such a dodge by Ken Ham because he's basically saying, well, if scientists believe something, it should be in the scientific method. No, because you wouldn't accept Islam in the scientific method.
Yeah, that's why peer review is such a key part of the methodology, because people's own beliefs can cause blind spots and biases, and we don't even always realize we're doing it. So we tell our friend, would you look at my work and make sure I didn't say something stupid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's integral. It's such an integral part of the process. It has to be, because I can't tell when I'm being biased, but someone else can, especially someone else with a vested interest in me, like sort of in competition with me. Of course, they're going to point out when I'm being biased.
Hopefully.
And actually, he revolutionized
hopefully
medicine. He's a biblical creationist, and I encourage children to follow.
That's fine. See, this is the disconnect. You've got a non sequitur with the whole argument that because a scientist who has contributed to the field has personal opinions, those personal opinions should be included in science. It's such a non sequitur. And you're not doing that for all beliefs. You're doing it for your beliefs.
Yeah. Plus, if we want to talk people in the field, should we bring up Operation Steve again?
What's Operation Steve? I don't know what that is.
There are more Steves, Stevens, and Stephanies in the biological sciences than creationist scientists put together. Yeah.
No, I've heard that before, and yes, it's probably true. It's such a small part of the scientific field. But regardless of how big it is, we shouldn't be putting our personal beliefs into science. It doesn't matter how big it is. But the fact is that evolution is not a personal belief. It's just not. They want to sort of set it up like, this your whole model is a personal. No, it's not. It's not a religion. It's not a personal belief.
People like that and make them their heroes. Let me introduce you to another biblical creation scientist.
My name is Danny Faulkner. I received my PhD in astronomy from Indiana University. For 26 and a half years, I was a professor at the University of South Carolina.
This guy annoys you?
Yeah. I did a thing on him not long ago, and I'm still annoyed.
I don't know how an astronomer can think the world is 6,000 years old. I don't understand that. I just it baffles the mind. It really does.
Lancaster, where I hold the rank of Distinguished Professor Emeritus. Upon my retirement from the university in January of 2013, I joined the research staff at Answers in Genesis. I'm a stellar astronomer. That means my primary interest is stars, but I'm particularly interested in the study of eclipsing binary stars. And I've published many articles in the astronomy literature, places such as the Astrophysical Journal, the Astronomical Journal, and the Observatory.
And how much of them included evidence for the creation? Zero of them did.
Oh, I need my Dr. Tour clip. Zero!
Zero!
There is nothing in observational astronomy that contradicts a recent creation.
I also mentioned Dr. Stuart Burgess, Professor of Engineering Design at Bristol University in England. Now, he designed a double-action worm gear set for the 3 hinges of the robotic arm on a very expensive satellite. And if that gear set had not worked, the whole satellite would have been useless. Yet Dr. Burgess is a biblical creationist who believes just as I believe. Now, think about.
No one is saying they can't be. This is the whole thing. There is an absolute non sequitur between can they be a biblical creationist and a scientist, and should biblical creation be included in the scientific process? You're answering the wrong question. You aren't. I don't. It's so stupid. Yeah.
This for a moment. A scientist like Dr. Burgess who believe in creation, just as I do, a small minority in the scientific world. But let's see what he says about scientists believing in creation.
I find that many of my colleagues in academia are sympathetic to the creationist viewpoint, including biologists. However, they're often afraid to speak out because of the criticisms they would get from the media and atheist lobby.
I agree, that's a real problem.
Okay, so name the fallacy. What fallacy is he doing here?
Wait, what now?
I don't remember the fallacy, but sorry, what did you just say would happen if people came out as creationists?
Yeah, I got distracted. Dave mentioned that Danny Faulkner took the Hugh Ross challenge, and I'm like, Hugh Ross has a challenge?
It's not working.
Topics. You know, I just want to say, by the way, that non-Christian scientists, I should say, non-Christian scientists are really borrowing from the Christian worldview anyway to carry out their experimental observations.
Oh, I think it was before that.
Yeah.
No, that was Danny Faulkner.
I just want to say, by the way, that creation. I have a question for Bill Nye. How do you account whether the laws of life and scientific method have to be borrowing from the topics?
Because of the criticisms they would get from the media and atheist lobby.
I agree, that's a real problem.
Sorry, what question were you asking?
So maybe go back like 10, 20 seconds just so we can hear what all he said.
Fuck's sake, why isn't that working? My thing's broken. I'm very sad about it.
Oh dear.
That is not playing.
Oh, we broke it.
Ah, crap.
Where I hold the rank of Distinguished Professor Emeritus. Upon my retirement from the university in January of 2013, I joined the research staff at Answers in Genesis. I'm a stellar astronomer. That means my primary interest is stars, but in particular
the robotic arm on a very expensive satellite. And if that gear set had not worked, the whole satellite would have been useless. Yet Dr. Burgess is a biblical creationist who believes just as I believe. Now, think about this for a moment. A scientist like Dr. Burgess who believe in creation, just as I do, a small minority in the scientific world. But let's see what he says about scientists believing in creation.
I find that many of my colleagues in academia are sympathetic to the creationist viewpoint, including biologists. However, they're often afraid to speak out because of the criticisms they would get from the media and atheist lobby.
I agree, that's a real problem today. We need to have freedom.
Yeah, they're afraid to speak out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no.
It's a conspiracy.
Like,
right.
For some reason.
Okay, granted, I can speak mostly for the fields of geology and biology.
Mm-hmm.
As long as your science is good, we don't care what your personal beliefs are in that regard.
Yeah, so Mary Schweitzer
from all kinds of religious backgrounds. I've had people who believed in honestly pretty kooky things, but their science was good. That's all that really matters.
Yes. And Mary Schweitzer is a direct, absolutely violates what he's been saying. She was sort of not believed when she first spoke out, presented the science, stuck to the science, and showed that everybody was wrong. Oh, the fallacy that they're doing is appeal to authority. They're appealing to these people as authority figures in order to make their case. It doesn't matter what these people personally think. That is a fallacy.
Well, appeal to authority, I might have brought it up before on this channel, but appeal to authority feels odd to me because isn't the fallacy when you declare yourself as an authority and try to
it's an appealing to an authority who is not actually an authority on the topic, right? So it's any appeal to somebody that has not got the authority to demonstrate what you are trying to demonstrate. In this case, he is conflating their authority in their field with the authority over what should be in science, which they don't have, right? Okay. So he's sort of conflating those two to say, hey, these are authority figures in science. They should, their weight of their personal opinions should tell us what we put in science, which they're not an authority on that, right? That is the purview of sort of, the product of the scientific field itself, what works and what doesn't work. So, that's sort of the fallacies that he's doing.
Okay.
It's much like my grandmother used to say, what's that have to do with the price of tea in China? It's like, the Pope thinks condoms are demonic. Okay, but who cares what the Pope thinks on that subject?
When we appeal to science as an authority, and people go, oh, you're appealing to authority. No, because we're not appealing to any one person. What we're appealing to is the process, because the process of science has been demonstrated to be reliable. So that's why we're using science to say, hey, this has weight because the process works. So that's where, creationists say, hey, when you quote a scientific paper, it's an appeal to authority. No, it's not. We're appealing to the process being a good process for finding out what's true, not the individual themselves. Okay.
To be able to speak on these topics. I just want to say, by the way, that non-Christian scientists are really borrowing from the Christian worldview anyway to carry out their experimental observational science.
Boo! No one's borrowing from the Christian worldview. No, I don't understand this argument. I do not understand it. I'm sorry.
When they're doing observational science using a scientific method, they have to assume the laws of logic, they have to assume the laws of nature, they have to assume the uniformity of nature.
So, anybody know what this is? Does anyone know what school of apologetics this is?
School of apologetics.
Is it a... Uh-huh. It's not presumptive.
Do you mean presupposition?
Good call.
Presuppositional, yeah.
It is presup, yes. Yes, it is presup.
I didn't realize that.
So he's basically...
School. I thought you could get kicked out of school loosely. For that.
Well, yeah, no philosopher takes serious. So he's basically saying that the laws of logic, laws of nature, uniform nature are all reliant on God to be there. That is his presuppositionalist. So he's presupposing these all require a God, and then basically saying, well, they're taking our worldview to do, this is presup 101.
I mean, think about it. The universe came about by natural processes. Where do the laws of logic come from? Did they just pop into existence? Are we in a stage now where we only have half logic? So you see, I have a question for Bill Nye. How do you account for the laws of logic and the laws of nature from a naturalistic worldview that excludes the existence of God? Now, in my opening statement, I also discussed a different type of science.
There are emergent properties of the universe, and we don't know if they can happen in any other way.
It's also shifting the burden of proof. You have to demonstrate that the laws of logic and nature come from a God. You can't just declare that to be the case and then say, well, you prove otherwise. Even if we don't know where the laws of logic and the laws of nature come from, it doesn't mean a God produced them. You have to demonstrate that. So it's just shifting the burden of proof over to the other side. Mm-hmm. Again, presup 101.
And again, we don't know if they can be different either. Because we have a sample size of 1.
Right.
See, again, there's a confusion here. There's a misunderstanding here. People, by and large, have not been taught to look at what you believe about the past as different to what you're observing in the present. You don't observe the past directly. Even when you think about the creation account, I mean, we can't observe God creating. We can't observe the creation of Adam. We admit that. We're willing to admit our beliefs about the past. But see, what you see in the present is very different. Even some public school textbooks, actually, they sort of acknowledge the difference between historical and observational science. Here is an earth science textbook that's used in public schools, and we read this. In contrast to physical geology, the aim of historical geology is to understand Earth's long history. And then they make the statement, historical geology, so we're talking about historical science, tries to establish a timeline of the vast number of physical and biological changes that have occurred in the past.
I don't think that's Lutkins exactly what they mean.
Okay.
Carbuck and Lutkins. I'm gonna look
at
that.
They're just different aspects of geology. Physical geology just tells us how rocks form, how they deform, and how they change. Then we can use what we learn from physical geology to look into the past and see, okay, this rock looks like it was really squished. It has these certain minerals in it. It was probably squished. Like
this is also very geology. Specific citation here. Like Indiana Teachers Edition.
It's an Indiana It's an Indiana textbook.
I wonder if that extra detailed citation is because that is the fact that it says historical science in there. That's why Ken is aiming at it specifically, because it confirms even scientists know historical science is different. But the very super specific, like if you get your hands on a copy of that book and you don't find that quote, well, it's the wrong edition. and then you find the right edition, and they're like, well, it's the teacher's edition, and then you find the teacher's edition, they go, well, it's special for Indiana for some reason, you know?
Yeah, and again, it's not observable science versus historical science. It's taking what we observe and using it to understand the past.
Historical context, yeah.
We study physical geology before historical geology because we first must understand how Earth works before we try to unravel its past. In other words, we observe things.
That is not true. That is not true. We do look at how rocks form first and then understand the past. We don't do it the other way around. This is
There's
how
lots
could
of
you
tests we
possibly
can do in a
that?
lab. Like we can heat rocks up to be molten, squish them like they're between continents. We do this stuff all the time. There was a famous experiment in, I think, the 60s or 70s called the Bowen reaction series. This geologist just took a bunch of volcanic rocks and melted them down and watched what formed as they solidified.
Right.
And that gives us a ton of information on a bunch of rocks we find. Like, oh, they cooled slow, big crystals. They cooled fast.
Did you see him take a shot at uniformitarianism as well? Like, we assume what's happened in the past is what's same as what's happening now. It's like, yeah. Do we have any suggestion that the laws of nature change? Why would we think that? I don't understand that. It's kind of this. Well, if we don't use uniformitarian, if we assume the laws of nature could be different in the past, then anything is possible. It's like, then why are you even suggesting creationism? Then we have to throw everything. It's the chess playing pigeon. You know, it just knocks over the board, shits on everything, and then walks away like it's won. That's essentially what it is.
I mean, you say the laws of physics used to be different. I can say that the Bible used to be a guide for a D&D campaign. Prove I'm wrong.
I still think that's a better explanation.
That probably is.
Assuming that that's always happened in the past, and we're going to try and figure out how this happened. See, there is a difference between what you observe and what happened in the past. Let me illustrate it this way. If Bill Nye and I went to the Grand Canyon, we could agree that that's a Coconino sandstone in the Hermit Shale, and there's the boundary. They're sitting one on top of the other. We could agree on that. Do you know what we would disagree on? I mean, we could even analyze the minerals and agree on that. But we would disagree on how long it took to get there. But see, none of us saw the sandstone or the shale being laid down. There's a supposed 10 million year gap there. But I don't see a gap. But that might be different to what Bill Nye would see. But see, there's a difference between what you actually observe directly and then your interpretation in regard to the past. When I was at the Goddard Space.
Yeah, and we haven't seen a god put it down either. So what? Like, this is the whole thing. You just want to tear everything down and say, we can't know anything. So my beliefs are just as valid as yours.
If only there were some way we could like investigate and compare. And I know I'm being silly again.
Also, Ken, you keep your grubby hands off the Coconino. The Coconino is beautiful.
Santa, a number of years ago, I met creationists and evolutionists who were both working on the Hubble telescope. They agreed on how to build the Hubble telescope. You know what they disagreed on? Well, they disagreed on how to interpret the data that telescope obtained in regard to the age of the universe. And, you know, we could go and talk about lots of other similar sorts of things. For instance, I've heard Bill Nye talk about how a smoke detector works using the radioactive element americium. And, you know, I totally agree with him on that. We agree how it works. We agree how radioactivity enables that to work. But if you're then going to use radioactive elements and talk about the age of the Earth, you've got a problem, because you weren't there. We've got to understand.
What? Because you weren't there. No, of course we weren't there. But we can still use the radioactive elements to say, hey, this is why the Earth can't be 6,000 years old, because of the heat problem. But you're sort of saying, hey, laws could have been completely different in the past.
I don't know a Kent came from a non-Kent, but I do know how humans are made today, so I assume that's what happened to Eric Hovind.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have observed, well, I haven't personally observed, but I've heard from eyewitnesses that Eric Hovind was produced by Kent Hovind.
Well, it kind of lends itself to last Tuesdayism kind of thing, right? That you can't prove that you weren't created with all your memories last Tuesday kind of thing. It's this whole idea of, well, if you didn't observe it directly, then you can't be sure. No, Ken, go away. Like, you're not doing this stupid stuff of saying, hey, because every time, like, science works on inference, that if we do something and it keeps happening, that's the way that it happens in the past, and that's the way that it will happen in the future. Like, if you want to believe that's not the case, that's fine. The philosophy class is just down the hallway. Go to that class, because then you're not doing science. It's fine. If you want to believe that, have at it. But you can't say, I want to apply that to science, because inference is a principle of science. But I don't want this guy back in our country. You can keep him, seriously. I don't.
Parent elements, daughter elements, and so on. We could agree with your creationist or evolutionist on the technology to put the rover on Mars, but we're going to disagree on how to interpret the origin of Mars. I mean, there are some people that believe there was even a global flood on Mars and there's no liquid water on Mars. But we're going to disagree maybe on our interpretation of origins, and you can't prove either way, because not from an observational science perspective, because we've only got the present. Creationists and evolutionists both work on medicines and vaccines. You see, it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist. All scientists have the same experimental or observational science. So I have a question for Bill Nye. Can you name one piece of technology that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules, man, evolution?
Vaccines. Would vaccines count?
He did mention vaccines in his list. However, I would still contend that you have to have a belief in evolution. Otherwise, why even bother with vaccine?
Yeah.
Like, God made it, and he'll make it however he wants, and all that crap.
Yeah.
But like modern agriculture, in that debate with T-Rock, I brought up cow milk yields are up 70% in the last less than a century. I don't remember the exact figure offhand.
But tons of modern crop breeds
way
have
up.
been bred using selective breeding, which is just evolution with humans.
It's artificial selection, but it's
but he's
still
been very
a change in allele
specific.
frequencies over time.
He's been very specific. It has to be molecules to man. So really, he's talking about abiogenesis, right? Like, let's face it, he's not talking about evolution. He's shifting the goalposts to say, hey, what technology needs abiogenesis?
Okay, well, by the same token, there's no technology that depends on poofing into existence as a creation either.
Correct.
So either way, he is FUBAR.
Now, here's another important fact. Creationists and evolutionists all have the same evidence. Bill Nye and I have the same Grand Canyon. We don't disagree on that. We would have the same fish fossils, one from the Creation Museum, the same dinosaur skeletons, the same animals, the same humans, the same DNA, the same radioactive decay elements that we see.
And here's the thing, you can make this argument with the most ludicrous of things. Like, a flat earther could say, hey, we've got the same evidence, we just interpret it different. Like, this argument has been made for flat earth. That's the thing. That is what you're opening science up to. Anybody with any different opinion can say, hey, I see all your radioactive evidence, but I believe in magic unicorns. And you can't prove it wasn't magic unicorns causing all of this.
Hell yeah.
So, this is the thing. Like, this is why I use the pigeon analogy for this one, because if you allow your personal beliefs in, you've got to allow everybody's personal beliefs in, including the ones you disagree with, Ken Ham. You've got to allow flat earthers in. You've got to allow, astrologers in who think that because your sign is in Libra, then your brain chemistry goes. Like, you can't do this. It is antithetical.
It'll be funny.
Sorry?
Let the Satanists in, it'll be funny.
Yeah. You've got to allow the Satanists to, conduct worship to, cause atoms to spin or something. I don't know. Like, this is ridiculous.
We have the same universe. Actually, we all have the same evidences. It's not the evidences that are different. It's a battle over the same evidence in regard to how we interpret the past. And you know why that is?
Yeah, but there's 50 million people there who believe in aliens, who believe in, reptile men, who believe in a flat earth, who believe in magic unicorns, who believe in fairies. Like, this isn't the model. It's your side has a ton of people that believe all kinds of crap, and you don't want them to be in the picture.
Because it's really a battle over worldviews and starting points. It's a battle over philosophical worldviews and starting points, but the same evidence. Now, I admit my starting point is that God is the ultimate authority. But if someone doesn't accept that, then man has to be the ultimate authority. And that's really the difference when it comes down to it.
Why does man have to be the ultimate authority? Why can't just man be the authority over science and just go do your own thing in your own churches? Why?
Why does there need to be an authority?
Well, an ultimate authority, absolutely, yeah. I mean, what if man is the ultimate authority? Like, you're already presupposing that man isn't the ultimate authority. I don't even know what an ultimate authority is when it comes to the universe. You're weird, Ken. He's weird.
You see, emphasizing the difference between historical origin science, knowledge about the past when you weren't there. We need to understand that we weren't there. Or experimental or observational science, using your five senses in the present, the scientific method, what you can directly observe, test, repeat. There's a big difference between those two. And that's not what's being taught in our public schools. And that's why kids aren't being taught to think critically and correctly about
Yeah, like start teaching Satanism and that Satan created the world in public schools. See how far your freedom of religion will hold then. That's why I love the Satanists, because they really do show the Christians why having sort of religion in places is a bad idea. Because they want their religion in there and nobody else's.
Yeah.
I saw the best post from somebody that said, like, Satanists don't believe in an actual Satan. It's more a philosophical view. And someone responded, then what do you call somebody who believes in a literal Satan? And the Satanic Temple replied, Christians.
I love it.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was absolutely amazing. I'll probably put it up on a community post when I find it. It was just yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I need to get my official membership. I keep forgetting.
I appreciate the Satanic Temple. I've never felt the inclination to join it. I don't know. I really should talk to them and see what their actual beliefs are, kind of thing. Because I've read the Satanic Bible, and that. If you've read the Satanic Bible, it has good things in, and it has horrible things in, just like any holy book. So, I don't know. I've never looked into it.
origins issue. But it's also important to understand when talking about creation and evolution, both involve historical science and observational science. You see, the role of observational science is this: it can be used to confirm or otherwise one's historical science based on one's starting point. Now, when you think about the debate topic and what I affirmed concerning creation, if our origins or historical science based on the Bible, the Bible's account of origins is true, then there should be predictions from this that we can test using observational science. And there are.
Yeah, okay, what can you predict and test?
For instance, based on the Bible, we expect to find evidence confirming an intelligence produced life. We'd expect to find evidence confirming after their kind. The Bible says God made kinds of animals and plants after their kind, implying each kind produced.
Evidence confirming an intelligence produced life. Have they found that? Is there evidence of that? No.
I haven't heard of anything.
No, there isn't.
Is its own, not that one kind changes into another. You'd expect to find evidence confirming a global flood of Noah's day.
Yeah, and there's no evidence there's a global flood, like zero. It's none whatsoever.
Evidence confirming one race of humans, because we all go back to Adam and Eve. Biologically, that would mean there's one race. Evidence confirming the Tower of Babel, that God gave different languages. Evidence confirming a young universe. Now, I can't go through all of those, but a couple of them we'll look at briefly. After their kind, evidence confirming that. In the Creation Museum, we have a display featuring replicas, actually, of Darwin's finches. They're called Darwin's finches. Darwin collected finches from the Galapagos and took them back to England, and we see the different species, the different beak sizes here. And, from the specimens that Darwin obtained in the Galapagos, he actually pondered these things and how do you explain this? And in his notes, actually, he came up with this diagram here, a tree. And he actually said, I think. So he was talking about different species, and maybe those species came from some common ancestor. Actually, when it comes to finches, we actually would agree as creationists that different finch species came from a common ancestor, but a finch is what they would have to come from.
Yeah, so the whole point is it wasn't just Darwin said, I think, it's that Darwin said, yeah, I think this, and it was a hypothesis, and it's been demonstrated over time. Like, there's nothing that has contradicted his original sort of base idea of how everything worked. Nothing. In fact, he made a few testable predictions that came true. So,
Also, Ken's just wrong. They're not finches. They're tanagers.
What?
So he's wrong on multiple counts.
Okay, well, I thought they were finches, so I'm wrong as well. That's fine. Tanagers, were they?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the difference
is.
But
they just look like European
finches.
finches, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, they look similar, so they're called finches. They're small, flighty birds.
Yeah.
You see, Darwin wasn't just thinking about species. Darwin had a much bigger picture in mind. When you look at The Origin of Species and read that book, you'll find he made this statement: from such low and intermediate form, both animals and plants may have been developed. And if we admit this, we must likewise admit that all organic beings which have ever lived on this earth may be descended from some one primordial form. So he had in mind what we today know as an evolutionary tree of life.
And as basic as that is, that's a better diagram than Hovind uses.
That all life has arisen from some primordial form. Now, when you consider the classification system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, we would say as creation.
Well, that's the Linnaeus thing, and there's problems with that sort of classification system. There's big problems with that classification. It is an older system done by Linnaeus. We don't sort of use cladistics nowadays rather than that sort of
It's a couple hundred years out of date, but it does get the point across for most people. which
it simplifies
is what it's
things.
going for today.
Yeah, it makes things simpler to sort of categorize them like this, but there's probably better categorization systems like cladistics available. That's the one we've got, so we're trying to fit everything into this old system.
Yee.
We have many creation scientists who research this, and for lots of reasons, I would say the kind in Genesis 1 really is more at the family level of classification. For instance, there's one dog kind, there's one cat kind. Even though you have different genera, different species, that would mean, by the way, you didn't need anywhere near the number of animals on the ark as people think. You wouldn't need all the species of dogs, just 2. Not all the species of cats, just 2. You see, based on the biblical account there in Genesis 1, creationists have drawn up what they believe
is. Do you think he knows that bear dogs exist?
Bear dogs?
Probably not. Yeah, they're kind of intermediate. Like, aren't they a fossil thing?
Yeah, dogs and bears are really closely related, and their ancestors looked like a fusion.
That
they're
makes
also
sense.
closely related to seals.
Yeah.
Yes, I know dogs are related to seals. Yeah, very closely.
I mean, technically, we're all related to strawberries, but yeah, closely related. Yeah, the morphology of bears, they look like freaking dogs. They are dogs that are bigger and, you know, have mightier claws and things.
It's a wolf the size of a lion that went to the gym for 2 years.
Oh, that's horrifying. Yeah, all right.
They're
you can climb trees and work your
I
TV.
love them.
Variation orchard. In other words, they're saying, look, there's great variation in the genetics of dogs and finches and so on. And so over time, particularly after
Yeah, so ERVs blows this absolutely completely out of the water. That's the thing. Like, that is the death knell for this idea of an orchard, because we have some ERV fragments in us that you also find in fish. Whoops. And we know that they they're virus fragments. We know they are virus fragments. Like, that isn't up for debate. So this whole idea is blown straight out of the water by that.
I'm also a fan of convergent evolution to demonstrate that. How they say, oh, it's not common ancestry, it's common design. And sometimes it isn't common ancestry. Like modern birds have 4-chambered hearts, and we have 4-chambered hearts, but they developed separately, so they have different characteristics. If there were a common designer, they should be identical, one would think.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd think.
And also just... I watched a Logic video from a few years ago where he brought up something that's applicable here. Whenever they have dinosaurs and birds in different, zones, they always choose the least bird-like looking dinosaurs to represent them.
Yeah.
When, there's such a gradient. It's hard for genuine paleontologists to tell where the line is. And in fact, they're
never showing an Archaeopteryx. They're never showing the Archaeopteryx as the dinosaur.
Show almost any Maniraptoran.
I just went to the Satanic Temple website. Apparently, there's a join page. It doesn't really give a lot of info. I typed in my contact info, and it says, "Thanks for contacting us. We'll get back to you soon." So I will have to update you in the future whenever the hell an email appears from them that tells me more.
Okay.
Yeah. Fun times.
Okay. Well, Titan offered to send me a Discord server.
Oh, Titan is sending you to hell.
Oh, often, frequently. Yeah. So yeah.
I would expect that there were 2 dogs, for instance, you could end up with different species of dogs because there's an incredible amount of variability in the genes of any creature. And so you'd expect these different species up here, but there's limits. Dogs will always be dogs, finches will always be finches. Now, as a creation...
Yeah, prove that. Like, there's nothing you can point to that keeps all finches as finches and all dogs as dogs. There's nothing.
And in fact, we can prove the opposite, because in science, most things, arrow of time notwithstanding, are reversible. They work the same way forwards and backwards. And we may not be able to prove that dogs will always be dogs, but we can prove that dogs have not always been dogs.
Right.
Here, Mark, I put a link in the private chat. Opportunity for a poll if you're interested in doing one.
Maybe.
Ooh, shiny.
Just.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not going to say whether this is a bird or a dinosaur, but this is almost exactly what it would have looked like when it was alive. We know this.
I'm going to say dinosaur.
Well, we know it from the fossils. We also know it from, I forget what it is, something to do with lasers. But we know what color it was, and it was shiny, iridescent black like a raven. So the hypothetical poll would be, is this a dinosaur or a bird, chat? What do you think?
I'm going to wait for the poll.
Because
I have an answer, but I don't want to taste. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Beamsy sent us a picture of his frickin'
So
cheesy
what are you asking?
sourdough,
What are you
and now
asking?
I'm on food again.
just 2 options for the poll: dinosaur, bird. Feel free to add a third if you want. Just what is this?
Vegetable.
I have to add a third option now. You realize that, don't you?
Yeah, I know. That's why I said it.
Okay.
Oh no, I want to hit the third option.
You know, it's a trick question, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, okay. I guess, is this more of a dinosaur or more of a bird? Because yes, birds are dinosaurs, but what side of the gradient? I'm just curious what the chat thinks, and I'll reveal it when the poll's done. We can go back to
all the fun.
Bill
Yeah. We can.
Ken now. Just curious, because yeah, they always show the least bird-like dinosaurs. Always.
I'll
when
keep
we
it
have
down the
stuff
bottom.
like this.
Yeah,
So I
like
maintain
they're
observational
like,
science actually
behold,
confirms
Dimetrodon.
Yeah.
this model based on the Bible. For instance, take dogs. Okay, in a science.
But Dimetrodon's the one with the sail on its back. Do you mean Dimorphodon?
It's a running joke with Doug Dino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, Dimetrodon is not the one. I think you're thinking of Dimorphodon, right? The
No,
one that's sort of
it was Dimetrodon, but the point is that it's not actually a dinosaur.
In my video, I asked people to say what their favorite dinosaur was. He said Dimetrodon, and I said I hated it.
Paper dated January 2014, that's this year, scientists working at the University of California stated this: we provide several lines of evidence supporting a single origin for dogs and disfavoring alternative models in which dog lineages arise separately from geographically distinct wolf populations. And they put this diagram in the paper. By the way, that diagram is very, very similar to this diagram that creationists proposed based upon the creation account in Genesis. In other words, you have a common dog ancestor that gives rise to the different species of dogs, and that's exactly what we're saying here. Now, in the Creation Museum, we actually show the finches here, and you see the finches with their different.
So is he saying that dogs didn't evolve from wolves? Is that what he's trying to say?
I think what he's saying is that dog kind and wolf kind were the same kind before microevolution or something.
Okay.
Beaks beside dog skulls, different species of dogs. By the way, there's more variation in the dog skulls here than there are in these finches. Yet the dogs, well, that's never used as an example of evolution, but the finches are, particularly in the public school textbooks. Students.
Of course they use it as an example of evolution. It's artificial selection, you doink. Like, seriously.
How dare we teach things that we've demonstrated and shown to probably be true in schools? How are the kids ever going to learn proper mythology if you go giving them facts and shit?
Of course we teach that. Of course that's evolution. Of course it is. It's just evolution with artificial selection instead of natural selection. Of course it's evolution. What are you talking about? Ken Ham.
Taught, see the changes that are occurring here? And here's another problem that we've got. Not only has the word science been hijacked by secularists, I believe the word evolution has been hijacked by secularists. The word evolution has been hijacked using what I call a bait and switch.
First he's bitching about Darwin contaminating science with his misbegotten beliefs, and now he's like, well, the secularists have hijacked this word. It's like, bitch, you were claiming the secularists introduced it and that it was corrupt from the beginning. Come on now. Pick a fucking lane.
And like, for some reason, these creationists, they're immune to irony. They're totally immune to irony that they're taking evolution and trying to say, hey, if in order to be evolution, it's got to prove everything in the universe. When we have clear disambiguations between, stellar evolution and biological evolution, and we're obviously talking about biological evolution. Like that's it got to the point of when I was debating Hovind, you had to say that the topic has got to be biological evolution because he would bring up this crap. And the crazy thing is that even though I made the topic biological evolution, he would still go to like, how did the planet form? Like, really? Really? Bait and switch. Yeah, there's some people doing a bait and switch, but it ain't us, mate. Friggin' Ken Ham!
Let me explain to you. The word evolution is used in public school textbooks, and we often see it in documentaries and so on. It's used for observable changes that we would agree with, and then used for unobservable changes, such as molecules to man. Let me explain to you what's really going on, because I was a science teacher in the public schools, and I know what the students were taught, and I check the public school textbooks anyway to know what they're taught. See, students are taught today, look, there's all these different animals, plants, but...
Was he in the public school sector? Was he?
I hope not.
Yeah, same here. That's a horrific, man. He says a former science teacher, but I don't think it was in. Was it in the public school system or was it in the private school system?
So are we talking about Ken? Or...
Oh no, he did teach at a high school in Brisbane.
Oh, I see.
Ugh.
So, related to our side quest, I just got an email from the Satanic Temple. It says, welcome to the Satanic Temple. Thank you for joining. So apparently just dropping your info on the Satanic Temple website, you can join. You can be an official member. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in this email, like you can sign up for a scholar program and eventually reach ordination. Apparently, you actually, unlike some other churches, you actually do have to do some study on what Satanism stands for and such before you can be ordained, but you can be an ordained Satanist minister, so that's fun. They have stuff on like the After School Satan Club, Protect Children Project, religious reproductive rights, all the things that they do to pee in the Cheerios of the people who want to take away other people's rights, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a welcome email. But yeah, you can be an official member.
Link
just
or
signing up.
something, Ember, for the Satanic Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
We're all part of this great big tree of life that goes back to some primordial form. And look, we see changes in finches, changes in dogs, and so on. Now, we don't deny the changes. You see that. You see different species of finches, different species of dogs. But then they put it all together in this evolutionary tree. But that's what you don't observe. You don't observe that. That's belief there. That's their historical science. I would say it's wrong.
No, it's not belief. ERVs, dude. We can tell. It's not belief. There's evidence for it. That's the thing. Like, this is just Hovindisms. It's the same crap that there's always been. There's lots of evidence for it.
But you know what you do observe? You do observe different species of dogs, different species of finches, but then there are limits, and you don't see one kind changing.
Where are the limits? Where are the limits?
Show
that
me
there's
the limit.
limits. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like you challenge these people to say, hey, where is the sort of genes that stop things from changing? Because we know they start change. They can't show how they stop from changing. There's nothing in the DNA that says, hey, you're not going to change any further than this kind of thing. There's nothing in there. It's so weird. It's so weird.
We do have regulatory genes. They change all the time. They're like very high. They mutate all the time. So like you know things that restrict other genes, and they change. It's just like.
Well, no, actually,
it's a girl.
If you teach creation,
Sorry, Ember.
Oh, just that it's a gur.
It's a gur. It's a wild gur.
Yep, I did put the link in the chat, but the chat's awful busy, so I also put it in the private chat in case. Because I don't have a wrench, so I don't know if it actually works.
Oh, don't you?
Oh.
Can you say something in chat for me so I can wrench you? Oh, that sounds just slightly sus.
Speaking of peeing in Cheerios earlier, though, like I would like the Satanic Temple to come to Iowa, please. Our governor is being a thing.
What's your governor doing?
Just ban gender-affirming care.
That sucks.
Yeah, Kim Reynolds is horrible. I don't want her to be my governor, but...
Not up to you. Yeah.
Public schools, that's teaching religion. If you teach evolution, that's science. And I'm going to say, wait a minute. Actually, the creation model here, based upon the Bible, observational science confirms this. This is what you observe. You don't observe this tree. Actually, it's the public school textbooks that are teaching a belief, imposing it on students, and they need to be teaching.
You do not observe God making things. Sorry, you just don't. That's false.
It'd be cooler if you did, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would certainly lend a lot of credibility to their particular model, but you don't observe that. If you like, it's kind of like he wants to say, oh well, normal science, mainstream science is historical, like can't do historical science, but we want our account to be counted as better evidence than scientific evidence. Like, yeah, we're watching it 2 times because seriously, we've been through like half an hour of it, and it's been 2 hours. So I'm kind of conscious that this probably might have to be a 2-parter. I think.
I mean, we could just get through their openers and then do the Q&A.
Well, these are later. They did the 5-minute openers. Now they're on the 30-minute presentation each.
Yeah, and like that. Yes. That's just too long. Like, gee, for crying out loud, that's a proper class.
Yeah, it's like an actual lecture.
Well, I mean, yeah, we can make it 2 parts if you guys want. Like, finish it off next week. What do you say? Not a lot of agreement there.
Normally, I'd be like, oh, let's power through, and who cares if it's a 5-hour stream? But I have to do stuff with my kids early tomorrow, so I think a 2-parter would be better.
I've got stuff to do this afternoon as well, so I can't really go. I can go past midday, but I'm not that far past midday, which is in another hour, by the way. But that's okay. Well, let's go as far as we want to, and then just call it. If I might finish it off another time. All good. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Observational science to understand the reality of what's happening. Now.
Sorry?
I just said sounds good.
Sounds good.
What we found is that public school textbooks present the evolutionary tree as science, but reject the creation orchard as religion. But observational science confirms the creation orchard. So public school textbooks are...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't confirm an orchard. It doesn't. Not at all.
Rejecting observational science and imposing a naturalistic religion on students. The word evolution has been hijacked using a bait and switch to indoctrinate students to accept evolutionary belief as observational science. Let me introduce you to another scientist, Richard Lenski, Michigan State University. He's a great scientist. He's known for culturing E. coli in the lab. And he found there were some E. coli that actually seemed to develop the ability to grow on substrate, on citrate in substrate. But Richard Lenski is here mentioned in this book, and it's called Evolution in the Lab. So the ability to grow on citrate is said to be evolution. And there are those that say, hey, this is against the creationists. For instance, Jerry Coyne from University of Chicago says, Lenski's experiment is also yet another poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists. He says the thing I like most is that it says you can get these complex traits evolving by a combination of unlikely events. But is it a poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists? Is it really seeing?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Because it's completely changed its entire sort of feeding structure. It can now live off citrate instead of the food that it was on previously. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I could be wrong, but definitely means it's not E. coli anymore, because I think not being able to digest citrate was in the definition of E. coli. Mm-hmm.
Complex traits evolving. What does it mean that some of these bacteria are able to grow on citrate? Let me introduce you to another biblical creationist who is a scientist.
Hi, my name is Dr. Andrew Favich. I got my PhD from the University of Oklahoma in microbiology. I teach at Liberty University, and I do research on E. coli.
Looks like that guy from Blue's Clues. Except
Steve.
Yeah, except nerdier.
Yeah.
Secular journals from the American Society for Microbiology, including Infection Immunity and Applied Environmental Microbiology, as well as several others. My work has been cited even in the past year in the journals Nature, Science Translational Medicine, Public Library of Science, Public Library of Science Genetics. It's cited regularly in those journals. And while I was taught nothing but evolution, I don't accept that position. I do my research from a creation perspective. When I look at the evidence that people cite of E. coli supposedly evolving over 30 years, over 30,000 generations in the lab, and people say that it is now able to grow on citrate, I don't deny that it grows on citrate, but it's not any kind of new information.
Yeah, and this whole idea of new information, right? So if it develops and mutates and it has a new sequence of codons in it, that's new information. But they just want to say, hey, that could have developed. You're still using the same. Like it's so disingenuous. It really is.
The information's already there. Yeah. It's just a switch.
Define information, and then show how a mutation is not an increase of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they reported in there. There's nothing new.
See, students need to be told what's really going on here. Certainly there's change, but it's not change necessary for molecules to man. Now, we can look at other predictions. What about evidence confirming one race? Well, when we look at the human population, we see lots of differences. But based on Darwin's ideas of human evolution as presented in The Descent of Man, I mean, Darwin did teach in The Descent of Man there are lower races and higher races. Would you believe that?
We don't. That wasn't right. Like, he wasn't right about that. Darwin wasn't right about everything.
Look, yeah, he's diving into Darwin was a racist. Darwin lived in the 1800s. Everybody was racist, and honestly, for his time, Darwin was pretty progressive.
Yes.
And just he was one of the few scientists that definitively classified all humans as the same species. Like he said, we are one species. There is only one race of man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way he was using race wasn't race as in the way we use race at the moment.
Yeah, his book had races of cabbage and fish.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1900s, one of the most popular biology textbooks used in the public schools in America taught this. At the present time, there exist upon Earth 5 races or varieties of man, and finally the highest type of all, the Caucasians, represented by the civilized white.
When's that from? Does that say 1914 down the bottom?
I didn't catch what he said.
Yeah, presented in New York, America Book Company.
1914.
I think 1914. So you're pointing to science textbooks from 100 years ago as evidence that the theory is wrong today.
Yeah.
Well
He's
done.
saying people were racist in the early 1900s. People have been racist since there have been people.
And the poll is complete with it being a fever dream by a madman. So, yeah.
The Bible is racist as shit. What does that say about you, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, the Bible sort of, endorses going out and slaughtering tribes that, their land is yours kind of thing. So,
yeah, and to answer the poll, that was Microraptor, and it is a dinosaur.
Well, they're all dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs. That's the trick question, because birds are dinosaurs. I mean, I should have put a dinosaur or a non-avian dinosaur. Are they a dinosaur or a non-avian dinosaur?
They are a dinosaur.
Right.
And like the funniest thing about them is you put their skeleton right next to a velociraptor's and people can't tell the difference.
Wow. Hey, and here's a slight gaming tip for you. That is the most dangerous animal in Ark Survival Evolved. Just saying.
The Microraptor?
Yes.
Yeah, they are annoying as hell. I hate
Happens in Europe and America. Can you imagine if that was in
everybody does
public schools today? And yet that's what was taught, but it was based on Darwin's ideas that are wrong. You have a wrong foundation. You're going to have a wrong worldview. Now, had they started from the Bible and from the creation account in the Bible.
No, that's sort of saying because medicine came from the four humors system, then medicine is wrong today. No, Ken, that's not how that works.
And also he's saying if you start with the Bible, then you reach the right conclusion, whatever. Okay, how can we demonstrate that? How do we demonstrate the Bible is the right foundation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, I just sent a link, Mark. So, turns out someone actually did put Microraptor against Velociraptor.
Of course they did. This is the internet.
Yeah, it's just they're almost identical, except for the size. Well, actually, what was?
Yeah, I can share that. So that's them against one another, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, put that on your chart, Ken.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely make a presentation for a debate out of that. I would love to do that, actually.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I will keep that one aside.
What does it teach? Well, we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. We go through the Tower of Babel, different languages, so different people groups form.
Yeah, can I just point out the Tower of Babel was like 101 years after the Ark. Can I just point that out? 101 years, 8 people turned into enough to build the biggest tower ever known. No, that is some rapid evolution there. Because that's like, maximum 3 generations kind of thing.
And
suddenly
related,
we have
all the races of humanity were represented there. All the people who would become all the nations and such. And fun tidbit relating to racism, as according to Southern Baptists in the mid-20th century, the black race descended from Noah's son named Ham. So Ken, biblically speaking, is an inferior race.
Fair enough.
Distinct characteristics, but we'd say, you know what, that means there's biologically only one race of humans. Well, I mentioned Dr. Venter before, and he was a researcher with the Human Genome Project, and you remember in the year 2000, this was headline news, and what we read was this: they had put together a draft of the entire sequence of the human genome, and unanimously declared there is only one race, the human race. Wow, who would have guessed? But you see, there we have observational science confirming the creation account, not confirming at all Darwin's ideas. Now, there's much more that could be said on each of these topics.
Darwin literally said that! You melon!
Yeah.
I'm calling people melons again.
Obviously, you can't do that in a short time like this, and you can do a lot more research. I suggest you visit our website at Answers in Genesis for a lot more information.
I suggest you don't. It's full of trash. Like, visit Biologos instead. They believe in Jesus, and they actually do science.
So, the debate topic is creation of viable model of origins in today's scientific era. I said we need to define the terms, and particularly the term science and the term evolution, and I believe we need to understand how they're being used to impose an anti-God religion on generations of unsuspecting students. You see, I keep emphasizing we do need to understand the difference between experimental...
Hold on.
Yeah,
that was a big reach. I mean, his whole thing about whether creationism is a viable model or not, whatever, but he's saying if it's not creationism, it's anti-God.
Right.
Like, what about old Earth Christians, or what about Islam and Buddhism and all the
evolution?
What are you talking about?
A God. It doesn't disprove a God. It doesn't, because
evolution
there's
doesn't care about your God. It just has no need for that hypothesis.
Right, and there's nothing that evolution disproves of your God starting the process or guiding the process or whatever. It just says this is the process that is happening, and we know that everything was related. That's it. It doesn't go outside its scope, right? It doesn't do that. So, yeah. So it doesn't disprove a God at all. You can still have a God in this equation.
Yeah, I've heard. I can't even count how many theists tell me that evolution is just the mechanism God chose to use to create the diversity of life.
I've heard a theist say, hey, God is still guiding that mechanism. And it's like, okay, well, I don't see it, but, it doesn't disprove that. I think that you should have to prove that yourself, but it doesn't disprove that if you want to believe it. Like, that isn't what it does.
It just does not care.
Yeah.
Science and historical science. You know what?
Oh, and can I just point out again, like, they're fooling your children into believing something. Like, these people are immune to irony. Like, they literally use indoctrination. And that's not like saying it's as a pejorative. They give doctrine to children as the ultimate truth. That is literally indoctrination. Just no sense of irony whatsoever. They're immune to it.
The secularists don't like doing this because they don't.
I grew up in a very evangelical area. Wound up going to a couple of churches. I can confirm I was the worst person I've ever been in my life during those times, because it was just an echo chamber of a lot of really not great things treated or taught as doctrine.
Want to admit that there's a belief aspect to what they're saying, and there is, and they can't get away from it. Let me illustrate this with a statement from Bill Nye.
You can show the Earth is not flat. You can show the Earth is not 10,000 years old.
By the way, I agree. You can show the Earth is...
Yeah. Why is the flat earthers' belief bad, but yours is good? Why? If you're going to just bring your personal beliefs into it, why? I don't... Yeah.
Not flat. There's a video from the Galileo spacecraft showing the Earth and speeded up, of course, but spinning. You can see it's a sphere. You can observe that. You can't observe the age of the Earth. You don't see that. You see, again, I emphasize there's a big difference between historical...
Oh, I think flat earthers would disagree with you. I think they would be like, well, you've never been out into space. You've never seen it yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Man,
if the flat earth side of Christendom made him more money, you can bet he'd be a flurfer.
Maybe.
Science talking about the past, and observational science talking about the present. And I believe what's happening is this, that students are being indoctrinated by the confusion of terms, the hijacking of the word science and the hijacking of the word evolution in a bait and switch. Let me illustrate further with this video clip, because here I assert that Bill Nye is equating observational science with historical science, and I also say it's not a mystery when you understand the difference.
Apparently, people with these deeply held religious beliefs, they embrace that whole literal interpretation of the Bible as written in English as a worldview, and at the same time, they accept aspirin, antibiotic drugs, airplanes, but they're able to hold these two worldviews, and this is a mystery.
Actually, I suggest to you it's not a mystery. You see, when I'm talking about antibiotics, aspirin, smoke detectors, jet planes, that's Ken Ham, the observational science bloke. I'm Australian. We call guys blokes, okay? But when you're talking about creation in thousands of years or the age of the Earth...
Yeah, we do occasionally. He's got that's the first thing he's been right about so far.
Hey, stopped clock twice a day.
Well...
That's Ken Ham, the historical science bloke. I'm willing to admit that. Now, when Bill Nye's talking about aspirin, antibiotics, jet planes, smoke detectors, he does a great job at that. I used to enjoy watching him on TV too. That's Bill Nye, the observational science guy. But when he's talking about evolution of millions of years, I'm challenging him that that's Bill Nye, the historical science guy.
No, that's still observational science.
Yeah, I think he's a broken clock moving at half speed, so he's right once a day.
Once a day, yeah.
It's a special skill.
But this is all just semantics, like trying to wedge, basically, to wedge science into the science that he believes and the science he doesn't believe. Right? This is the wedge. He's just basically going, okay, I'm going to separate science into the science that I know that works and I believe, and the science that conflicts with my religious beliefs. Let's split that apart and then say one's just a worldview and not science. It's not going to work because the principles are exactly the same. Yeah, it's a rhetorical move. You're right, Tapioca Weasel. Absolutely right. It's a rhetorical move. Yes, it's semantics. It's just, creating a wedge and then saying, hey, these two things are completely different because I view them differently. So I'm going to sort of play word games to say, hey, one's real science and the other's not real science. No, they're just all science. That's what they are.
And that just reminds me of a debate I watched. I think it was Aaron Ra versus, I don't remember who was against, but like they spent the whole debate just arguing on like the definition of evolution.
Yeah.
Or no, is evolution true? And they spent the whole debate arguing about what true means rather than actually addressing the topic.
Yeah. That drives me crazy, these definitional debates. It's just,
Like, get on with it.
I mean, this should have been over as soon as Bill Nye went, forensic science is, by Ken's definition, historical science, and no one disbelieves it. No one calls it a worldview.
Right.
Not only did Ken not anticipate that, which it's the obvious go-to, and I try to account for it in his presentation, he's just ignoring it. But now, nearly 10 years later, they're still making the same case without accounting for it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I challenge the evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of their particular worldview.
I challenge the evolutionists to admit the belief elements of their, like.
Yeah, I believe Ken is wrong.
I just it's
prove me wrong, Ken.
I hate you, Tapioca Weed. That's it. Where's my ban button?
The fucking Teletubbies again.
Teletubbies. I hate you so much, right? No, that is funny. I must admit. Look, but here's the thing. Like, it's like a loaded question. It's so loaded. Oh, I challenge you to admit that you're wrong. I challenge you. Oh, you're not going to rise to my challenge. You're not going to admit that you're wrong. Oh, well, then everyone can see how dishonest. Like, wow.
Yeah, but Ken won't admit he's wrong. No, sir.
Yeah. Well, he can't be wrong. He's got God.
The word of God never changes.
And he's always honest.
Yep.
God is honesty itself.
Now, at the Creation Museum, we're only too willing to admit our beliefs based upon the Bible, but we also teach people the difference between beliefs and what one can actually observe and experiment with in the present. I believe we're teaching people to think critically and to think...
Immune to irony. Immune to irony. Well, we are teaching people to think hypercritically about the evolution, the science of evolution, but you're not teaching them to critically think about their own worldview. This is the thing, like, it's freaking painful, man. Like, seriously. I
love it, though. We should make clips of the highlights and be like Ken Ham as a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Right terms about science. I believe it's the creationists that should be educating the kids out there because we're teaching them the right way to think.
No.
I believe there's a clear constitutional violation of doing exactly that. But they want to argue, you're teaching your religion of evolution, so we get to teach our religion to them. And it's like, it's not a religion, you crazy man. What makes it a religion?
Like we mentioned earlier, and I really wish we'd hit, like, another debate I'd like to see Ken Ham participate in is, how are we sure his thing is right and not Imam Bishallah bin Muhammad's, or whatever. Every religious leader says, oh, well, our creation myth is scientific fact and should be taught in schools. Well, how do we determine which one of these, if any, is indeed scientific fact? Until you can demonstrate that, you need to GTFO.
And this bugs me about this debate topic, creation versus evolution. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to go into it, and I'm happy to do it. But what they're doing, and with my debate against T-Rock, he didn't bring up a single thing for his worldview. Like, he had no evidence for his worldview whatsoever. Like, none of it is saying, hey, here is the reason why we... All they do is attack evolution, and then creationism wins by default.
Yeah,
right?
well,
That
I think
debate
it was
with T-Rock and Jen, like, she openly admitted to it.
yeah, absolutely. And that's
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
need
Jen-
to give a model. Yours has all these problems.
yeah,
Please.
but
Yeah, well, I
like
mean,
Gudsick Gibbon
Jen's-
pointed out,
Yeah.
whatever your theology, any theological based system, it cannot predict. It can only bend over backwards to try to
Right.
accommodate data.
Right. Yeah, but sort of, I mean, but some people do try to sort of give evidence, poor evidence, but evidence that their worldview is correct. But these young Earth creationists, they don't. They just basically go, "Oh, evolution has problems. I win by default." That's what they're after doing.
It's just a huge overblown argument from incredulity.
100% agree.
We admit our origins of historical science is based upon the Bible, but I'm just challenging evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of evolution and be upfront about the difference here. As I said, I'm only too willing to admit my historical science based on the Bible. And let me go on and define the term creation as we use it. By creation, we mean here at Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum, we mean the account based on the Bible. Yes, I take Genesis as literal history, as Jesus did. And here at the Creation Museum, we walk people through that history. We walk them through creation, a perfect creation. God made Adam and Eve, land, animal kind, sea creatures, and so on. And then sin and death entered the world.
Yeah, and what's your evidence for that? What's your evidence for that? What are you teaching them is the evidence for that? Because we teach children that, hey, the DNA similarities between us and chimpanzees and other animals, and we have these reasons why we know, and how Darwin came up with that original idea by looking at, we're teaching them why we think that. You're not teaching them why you think that.
Yeah,
You're just teaching them it is.
Everything that we teach from an evolutionary standpoint, like all science, anyone can go out and repeat any given experiment for themselves if they have access to the equipment. You may have to go to a special school to learn how to do it, but if you really want to test it for yourself, you absolutely can. It's open to everyone. There's no limits on that, which is why it doesn't require belief the same as creationism, Stephanie, because you can demonstrate these things, not just take somebody's word for it.
Yeah, so I think I agree with Tapioca Wiz that everything requires belief. And not everything requires belief. Like, you believing stuff, just it is what it is. You believe things that you think are true, or that comports with reality, right? You think if I think that my coffee tastes good, that's a belief kind of thing. But
I'd say
you can well, I believe it. I believe it tastes good.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. Just because you have a belief based upon one thing doesn't mean it has a sort of equates to another belief. Like, if I believe this pen is solid because my senses can pick it up and I can move it around and stuff, that's one thing. If I believe that there's somebody outside my window because I saw a shadow, that isn't the same level of belief as having my pen, right? You can believe things for all kinds of reasons. Epistemology is about whether those beliefs are warranted and justified. So, yeah, we believe in evolution, but it's not like it's a belief like faith, that we're just believing it because that's what my holy book says and that's how it's been handed down. We have a system to back it up that says, hey, we have put into place all of these experiments and these things, and it is a reliable way to come up with the truth. Now, you don't have to adhere to that. Don't get me wrong. You can believe whatever you want for whatever reason you want. That's your choice. But I cannot sort of take people's word for it that a God exists without some sort of systematic way to confirm that is actually the case. And unfortunately, we don't have that. So it's not just about beliefs. It's about how you justify those beliefs, including to yourself. If you want to be honest to yourself, and I have a belief that's unjustified, I will try and challenge that belief, right? Because it's not a good belief to have, is an unjustified one. So I will challenge it. You know, if I believe that people are going to be mean to me in a thing, I try to challenge that because that belief is unwarranted. And I have social anxiety issues. Sometimes I think, you know, I'm nervous around people because I think that they're going to say something or do something that's going to, you know, make me feel bad. That is an unwarranted belief. It's unjustified, right? But, you know, I try to challenge it because I know it is. That's the thing. Like, I think sort of saying, hey, if two people believe something, they're both on par. That's unreasonable, Steph. I'm sorry, it just is.
So there was no death before sin.
Don't call people names. Like, seriously,
Yeah,
come on.
Sorry, I am.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think Steph is being a troll. I think Steph just has a different opinion. I had argument with Steph the other day. It's fine. Like, I don't like Steph's more than welcome. She's engaging. She's not preaching. I don't see a problem with it. Okay, so don't do that.
I get frustrated when people repeatedly.
No, I understand that, but yeah, there's no reason to call people names.
That means having billions of dead things before man sinned, and then the catastrophe of Noah's flood. If there was a global flood, you'd expect to find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. I had to say that because a lot of our supporters would want me to. And what do you find? Billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Confusion, the Tower of Babel. God gave different languages, so you get different people groups. So this is the geological.
Yeah, no,
Show me the tower, Ken.
Yeah, there's areas with no water fossils in them, by the way. Like, yeah. Yeah. Where's the ruins for this tower? You know, people think they found it. No one's ever found it.
Do you want to build a tower?
Do you want to reach the sky? Do you want to reach God in heaven? I don't know why we try. Look, I just made that up. I'm sorry. Hey?
No, it's good.
To slap him in the face? You could try for that.
Biological history as recorded in the Bible. So this is concerning what happened in the past that explains the present. And of course, that God's Son stepped into history to be Jesus Christ, the God-man, to die on the cross, be raised from the dead, and one day there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth to come. And, you know, not only is this an understanding of history to explain the geology, biology, astronomy, and so on to connect the present to the past.
But I just want you to note that none of this is explaining how they know all of this, like how they know that the Bible is true. It's just that's what's in the Bible. You know, none of it is an explanation to justify their belief. I just want you to note that.
It's also a foundation for our whole worldview. For instance, in Matthew 19, when Jesus was asked about marriage, he said, have you not read? He was made beginning, made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they'll be one flesh. He quoted from Genesis as literal history, Genesis 1 and 2. God invented marriage, by the way. That's where marriage comes from, and it's to be a man and a woman. And marriage, ultimately, every single biblical doctrine of
Where did marriage come from? What's marriage got to do with anything? This is weird. This is just weird. I'm sorry.
Directly or indirectly founded in Genesis. Why is there sin in the world? Genesis. Why is there death? Genesis. Why do we wear clothes? Genesis. Why did Jesus die on the cross? Genesis. It's a very important book. It's foundational to all Christian doctrine. And you see, when we look at that, what I call this.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain anything. Genesis doesn't explain how you know. It's just a non-answer. Like, you could just say, oh, how do you know that? Quran.
Well, there was a witness there whom we made up, but details.
Yeah.
Seas of history that we walk people through here at the museum. Think about how it all connects together. A perfect creation, it'll be perfect again in the future. Sin and death entered the world. That's why God's Son died on the cross, and to conquer death and offer a free gift of salvation. The flood of Noah's day, a reminder that the flood.
Yeah, he's just into preaching now. I might skip past this if he's just going to preach, you know, because that's all he's doing at the moment. He's just preaching.
It's a judgment because of man's wickedness, but at the same time, a message of God's grace and salvation. As Noah and his family had to go through a door to be saved, so we need to go through a door to be saved. Jesus Christ said, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he'll be saved. And we make no apology about the fact that what we're on about. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart God has raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. Now, as soon as I say that, people say, see, if you allow creation in schools, for instance, if you allow students to even hear about it, this is religion. You know, let me illustrate this, talking about a recent battle in Texas over textbooks in the public school. A newspaper report said this: textbook and classroom curriculum battles have long ranged in Texas, pitting creationists, those who see God's hand in the creation of the universe, against academics. Stop right there. Notice, creationists, academics. Creationists can't be academics. Creationists can't be scientists. See, it's the way things are worded out there.
Yeah, it's more that your stance on science, like you're trying to be a creationist in the science classroom. You're trying to be a creationist. Like, you being a creationist and an academic is fine. I get his point, but like seriously, dude. Yeah, he's just sort of, man.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's an indoctrination that's going on. You worry about religious and political ideology trumping scientific fact. Wait a minute, what do I mean by science? You're talking about what you observed, or are you talking about your beliefs about the past?
There's no difference. There's not historical science. Yeah, anyway.
Now, Kathy Miller is the president of the Texas Freedom Network, and she's vocally spoken out. She's spoken out about this textbook battle there in Texas. And the mission statement of the organization she's president of says, the Texas Freedom Network advances a mainstream agenda of religious freedom and individual liberties to counter the religious right. Religious freedom, individual liberties. And then she makes this statement. Science education, what does she mean by science?
Yeah, but the thing is, Answers in Genesis says that their mission statement is to give God the glory of his creation. Like their entire mission statement assumes that it's a creation and that God's responsible straight off the bat. Like,
Be based on mainstream science education, not on personal ideological beliefs of unqualified reviewers. Wait a minute, they want religious liberty and not personal ideological beliefs? I assert this. Public school textbooks are using the same word science for observational and historical science. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism, and outlaw the supernatural. They present molecules to man, evolution as fact, and they're imposing the religion of naturalism on generations of students. They're imposing their ideology on the students. That everything's explained by natural process.
Look, when
you
can demonstrate
ideology.
when you can demonstrate the supernatural to have some bearing in our world, then we can take you seriously. Until then,
Yes.
it does not belong in the sciences or education.
Right.
Except,
Right, so-
ironically enough, except in a historical context.
Yeah. and
Yes,
it's
yeah,
not
the
like-
same way we study the Greek myths.
Right. Like there's a place for religion in schools. It's called theology class. And that's fine. Like nobody's saying that you can't study. Nobody's saying that you can't have chapels in universities. Nobody's saying that you can't have, Bible groups and Christian groups in schools. That's fine. But the place for it is not in the science classroom, because science is methodological naturalism. The naturalism, it's like saying, oh, well, I want to do engineering, but math is just an ideology. We've got to put, some sort of worldview in there instead. No, you can't. You can't
My book
separate
says 2
it.
plus 2 is 5.
Right.
Prove me
You
wrong.
You
Wait,
can't
don't.
separate naturalism from science. It is methodological naturalism.
Yeah, and my big problem with these people, and by that I mean young Earth creationists like Ken.
What do you mean,
Is
you
the-
people?
You people.
You know what I mean.
I know what you
is
mean.
they'll almost always use their beliefs as an excuse to oppress others in some way, and that just that ticks me off an awful lot. Like your
everything
religious
about this is
convictions
ticking me
should
off,
have no bearing on how someone else lives their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because my personal beliefs have no impact on how. Like, I'm not. This is the thing. Nobody's saying that you can't pray or go to church. Or I think they're silly. I personally think it's silly, but I would never dare say, "Hey, you're not allowed to practice your religion because I don't understand it, or I think it's silly, or I think it's whatever." I will argue against it. I will say, "Hey, I think religion is damaging for these reasons, and those are good reasons." But I'm not going to tell you and infringe upon your freedom in order to enforce what I think, unless you're harming somebody else, which, I will argue that religion does do. But that's the thing. Like, it's.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I am a pretty staunch atheist dating a polytheist, and
I'm sorry.
we get along just fine.
So sorry. I mean, it's bad enough when you got one guy to put up the two with, much less the whole bevy.
I find it interesting because she's not so much religious, as in she just finds ancient practices really interesting, so she carries them out.
Everybody
so
finds
she's more of an
ancient practice really
anthropologist.
interesting.
Sort of like a soft anthropology.
A direct
Well-
experience kind of anthropology.
Yeah.
Well, waifu dino sounds awesome. Because,
Hopefully,
arts,
waifu
she-
sometime. We'll see how that goes.
well, I mean in the colloquial sense kind of thing. But I don't know what to call her. I don't think girlfriend dino kind of thing. I don't know.
Lady Dino?
Lady Dino, there you go, Ember. This is why I have you on, man. You get the best ideas.
That is a religion. What do you mean by religious liberty? They tolerate their religion. See, the battle is really about authority. It's more than just science or evolution or creation. It's about who is the authority in this world, man or God. If you start with naturalism, then what about...
No, there's a false dichotomy. If I can name one other thing that could be an ultimate authority, then it just blows this out of the water. And I can say, the Blarney Stone.
Absolutely. Yep, the Blarney. But that's exactly it for Ken. Is like, we're all talking about, we want facts. We want our kids to have the best knowledge so that they can succeed. And Bill Nye's talking about it matters what's real. For Ken, none of those things. It's all just a facade. Behind it all is this concept of ultimate authority. The facts don't matter. The truth doesn't matter. What's best for people doesn't matter. He needs his version of authority to be correct so he personally can be right. That is all that matters.
And this is the biggest argument to appeal to authority, because not only are we not sure that this is actually an authority over anything, but we can't even demonstrate the authority exists. Like, that's the crazy thing about this argument.
My
rainbow
dad works at Xbox.
Yeah.
Who decides right and wrong? Well, it's subjective. Harry. Well, whatever you want it to be. Get rid of old people. I mean, why not? I mean, they're just animals. They're costing us a lot of money. Abortion, get rid of spare cats, get rid of spare kids. We're all animals. But if you start from God's word...
and abortion.
Wow, what a straw man. Like, seriously. Wow.
Yes, we are for abortion.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone should get aborted. Everybody.
I'm officially a Satanist now, so I want to bathe in the blood of the unborn, I suppose.
No.
Besides right and wrong, marriage, one man and one woman, sanctity of life. We care for all people. They're made in the image of God. Life begins at fertilization, so abortion is killing a human being. We do see the collapse of Christian morality in our culture and increasing moral relativism because generations of kids are being taught.
I feel like he's just
Christian morality.
God damn it.
Did I
it's funny. Go back, I think it's like 60, 70 years. He'd be seen as weird for talking about abortion in a discussion like this. It only really became a big
about abortion in discussion now.
Well,
let's face it.
It only became a big thing for the religious right after Black people were granted equal rights because they couldn't fight against that anymore.
I saw a thing on Genetically Modified Skeptic today. I don't know how new the video is, but he was he had an expert on from the days of the Satanic Panic to talk about today's trans panic and how they're similar. And the expert said that the key to any kind of extremist movement like this is you have to pick a group who can't fight back because their population's too low or whatever.
Right.
Like, you'll never see somebody, with a movement saying the billionaires are coming for us all, which is factually true, but neither here nor there. And the second thing you need is a group to protect. So before it was, the Satanists are coming for your children. Now it's the trans people are coming for your children. But even back in the day, the KKK, we have to protect the white women because they can't protect themselves,
Right, yeah.
There is always a boogeyman in their minds.
Yep.
And I think it might say something about them.
Care for all people. They're made in the image of God. Life begins at fertilization, so abortion is killing a human being. We do see the collapse of Christian morality in our culture and increasing moral relativism because generations of kids are being taught the religion of naturalism and that the Bible can't be trusted. And so again, I say, creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era. You know what? I'm a science teacher. I want to see kids taught science. I love science. I want to see more Dr. DeMay.
Who does that sound like? Hovind? Anybody? Hovind?
Was this before they disowned him unofficially?
Maybe. Could be.
Well,
it was 7 years ago? When did he go to prison?
Well, he had an 8-year sentence, and this was 10 years ago, but I'm not sure if he's been out. It's really close.
Yeah, I'll Google it.
Whole universe is a result of natural processes and not designed by creator God. They might be looking in the wrong places or have the wrong idea when they're looking at the creation in regard to how you develop technology, because if they're looking at just random processes, that could totally influence the way they think.
COVID went in 2007, so it was before this.
Okay.
Well, in fairness, Hovind probably stole it off him, not the other way around.
Right, yeah, because Eric Hovind was present when they opened the Ark in the first place.
Yes. Yep.
It was a perfect world marred by sin. That could have a great effect on how they then look for overcoming diseases and problems in the world. I want children
Yeah, and sin, we can't seem to find it or get a vaccine against it. Like, there's no way, like, how are we supposed to investigate, like, disease caused by sin?
We can, actually. Like, Jesus is supposed to be the vaccine against sin, right? So once a person gives their heart to Jesus, it should be impossible for them to sin any further. They're free of corruption. And yet, we see priests doing things with
Ember,
people. Yeah.
Ember, I think they might have a point, because, evangelicals get the most abortions out of any group in America. Oh, wait. Oh.
Well, and plus, like, if that's your thing, it means that if you don't sin according to the Bible, if you don't do anything wrong, then you shouldn't get sick, and that is patently, demonstrably untrue. You're going to catch the flu whether or not you're living a good Christian life or not. Like, there is nothing about being a Christian that stops you from getting sick. So we know that's not true.
And one of my friends in school got cancer at 7 years old.
Oh, that sucks.
And then it came back when he was like 15 or 16.
Oof.
What did he do at 7 years old to earn cancer?
Yeah. Well, what did a newborn, do at 7 years old to get leukemia, kind of thing? Like, what could possibly that baby have done to get leukemia? So this is my issue. It's like sort of saying that your sin is what causes you to get sick, which is essentially what he's saying here.
Yeah, you must deserve it.
So if he ever gets an incurable disease, I guess we can throw that at him.
Yeah, you must have been a real bad boy, Ken. And everybody's going to die eventually. Like, what did you do? What did you do? Funny how these old people just keep sinning. These old people are the worst sinners. They keep getting sick all the time. It's just, what are they doing?
Yeah, I have a... Actually, I don't think I can say that on stream. Never mind.
Okay. I'm not going to press you on that one.
To be taught the right foundation, that there's a God who created them, who loves them, who died on the cross for them, and that they're special. They're made in the image of God.
Oh, yes, we have to be special, don't we?
Sorry?
We have to be special. We can't be just another animal. We have to be special.
Mm-hmm. So human exceptionalism, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it did occur to me when you had my old friend Larry.
I think humans are special, but that's sort of subjective view, because I just happen to be human, kind of thing.
Yes, we are a bit biased, but we do have some neat tricks compared to the other animals, like the ability to broadcast at near light speed around the goddamn globe.
Yeah,
it's a neat trick.
Well, there's some other things, like the ability to sweat through all of our pores. It's an incredible trick. It's cool.
Well,
it's not that useful anymore.
Other animals can sweat, just not to the degree humans do.
Right. I think they sweat through some of their pores, but not all of them.
Yeah. Hippos look like they sweat blood.
Really?
Yeah, wow, their sweat contains a natural sunscreen. It's just red in color.
Oh, sweet. I'm envious now.
I wish I sweated sunscreen. That would be incredibly handy.
Considering our natural adaptations, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, like, from a physical perspective, humans are good at one thing, and two things. They're good at very precise movements with their hands, which is something that most of our relatives can't really do. We have very fine motor control.
Mm-hmm. Doctor, I've knocked over my coffee twice today. Speak for yourself on the fine motor control.
Well, it's just, there are two animals, or I think there are only two animals that can beat humans in a long distance race. And those are humans and dogs. Those are horses and dogs.
No, horses can't.
Yeah, the horses lose too. Horses.
Yeah, the horses lose.
I'm a damn
They have a
annual race, yeah.
Long distance written.
Right. And they can beat us in a short race, not a long race.
They can beat us over short distances.
The only ones that can beat us in a long distance race are dogs, which we specifically bred for the purpose.
I don't even think they can beat us over long enough distance. I think that humans
sled dogs can run up to like 80 or 100 miles a day.
But we're not talking about speed. Yes. I'm not talking about speed. I'm talking about long distance endurance.
Yeah, because in like a sled dog situation, right? That's Arctic conditions. So the fact that they can only do heat exchange efficiently through their breath, that's not a problem for them. Okay, whereas our inability to, we have to sweat. But when we're all bundled up in parkas and shit, that diminishes the effectiveness of it. So in the Arctic, the dogs have a huge heat regulation advantage compared to humans.
Yes, I'm not saying it's true in all environments, but in their specific niche, and I just looked it up, they can run for, they can travel over 90 miles or 145 kilometers over a 24-hour period while pulling weight.
Yeah, so there is an animal that can beat humans over long distances in our environment, which is like sub-Saharan Africa environment. Because those dogs you're talking about, they would overheat in a sub-Saharan African environment.
In a sub-Saharan environment.
Right. But in their own environment, because we don't have the same adaptions, they would beat us, sure. No, I totally get that. But there is one animal that can, and that is the ostrich.
I'm not sure about that. I'll look it up because I'm pretty sure they have to slow down or they overheat.
Is that why their cousins, the emus, won that war?
Absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about the emus as well. Emus just beat us because they're evil killing machines that are put on the planet by the devil in order to make Australians look bad. That's essentially what they are. Okay, so
hey, on the plus side, it makes your country completely invincible to invasion because you don't even need your own army to fight back. Let the emus do it.
Well, that's why no one wants to invade Australia. It's not because, Australians are nice and pleasant and cool to be around. It's because emus are dicks. That's why. Nobody wants that smoke. Nobody wants that.
China couldn't take them.
Yeah, well, please. We can't take them. We just agree to live in different areas and never the planes shall cross. We've had to have a pact with the emus.
Okay, you may have a point with ostriches. I'm not entirely sure. But I do know that long distance endurance running was supposedly one of our main methods of hunting, because we could just run a prey animal down for miles and all it could do was run and get exhausted, which is cool.
It's still pretty cool that humans are up there,
I think that's why so many people get hung up on human exceptionalism, because we have so many neat tricks rolled up into one evolutionary tradition. That's obviously a thing. But then we also have advanced language capabilities because of our specialized voice boxes. We technically have written language capabilities, though it took us a little while to adapt that. But we have the symbolic recognition capabilities within our brain to make that work. Yeah. We've got these cool tool-using appendages here. We've got the creativity to come up with the frickin' tools. There's a lot of things we do. Right. Granted, they evolved. We can see our ancestors building those traits up to give them to us, but that's still a lot of neat shit.
And it seems like intuitively that we're something special in the animal kingdom because of that. But we're not. It's just a selection of very specialized things that work together that has made us incredibly successful.
Those who were the most creative and could communicate effectively and pass those on to their fellows are more likely to continue to the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make artificial fragrances, so we smell less funky.
Yeah, humans are exceptional in some respects. I will agree. But we can also die from tripping.
Oh my God, we're so fragile. It's so freaking stupid. Yeah. Our design is awful.
Either hyper durable or insanely fragile. There's not much of an in between.
Right.
He's been around a long time. And he's a smart guy. He could probably answer for all of us. Now, let's all be attentive to Mr. Nye as he gives us his 30-minute presentation.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Ham, I learned something. Thank you. Well, let's take it back around to the question at hand. Does Ken Ham's creation model hold up? Is it viable? So for me, of course, take a look. We're here in Kentucky on layer upon layer upon layer of limestone. I stopped at the side of the road today and picked up just a piece of limestone that has a fossil right there. Now, in these many, many layers, in this vicinity of Kentucky, there are coral animals, fossil, Zoazanthellae. And when you look at it closely, you can see that they live their entire lives. They lived typically 20 years, sometimes more than that, if the water conditions are correct. And so we are standing on millions of layers of ancient life. How could those animals have lived their entire life and formed these layers in just 4,000 years? There isn't enough time since Mr. Ham's flood for this limestone that we're standing on to have come into existence. My scientific colleagues go to places like Greenland, the Arctic, they go to Antarctica, and they drill into the ice with hollow drill bits. It's not that extraordinary. Many of you have probably done it yourselves. They're drilling other things, hole saws to put locks and doors, for example. And we pull out long cylinders of ice, long ice rods. And these are made of snow. And by one tradition, it's called snow ice. And snow ice forms over the winter as snowflakes fall and are crushed down by subsequent layers. They're crushed together and trapping the little bubbles. And the little bubbles must needs be ancient atmosphere. There's nobody running around with a hypodermic needle squirting ancient atmosphere into the bubbles. And we find certain of these cylinders to have 680,000 layers, 680,000 snow, winter, summer cycles. How could it be that just 4,000 years ago, all of this ice formed? Let's just run some numbers. This is some scenes from lovely Antarctic. Let's say we have 680,000 layers of snow ice and 4,000 years since the Great Flood. That would mean we need 170 winter, summer cycles every year for the last 4,000 years. I mean, wouldn't someone have noticed that? Wow. Wouldn't someone have noticed that there's been winter, summer 170 times one year? If we go to California, we find enormous stands of bristlecone pines. Some of them are over 6,000 years old, 6,800 years old. There's a famous tree in Sweden, Old Chico, is 9,550 years old. How could these trees be there?
Let's go to Sweden.
And there are some like interconnected trees that are like tens of thousands, aren't there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's some aspens in Colorado that collectively are upwards of 10,000.
Well, he's just talking about the ones with tree rings we can count, kind of thing, right? So the tree rings that we can actually count, because those ones that you're talking about are sort of they're clonal in nature. So it's the same organism, but it's a clone of a previous one, essentially.
Yeah, they like grow up from the roots, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. They when something happens to a trunk, I forget how long a given trunk lives, but when something happens to it, they just drop it and send up a new one. And once they're big enough and old enough, they'll have several main trunks going at the same time. They're really freaking cool.
Just
if there was
insert the swamp episodes from Avatar.
Yeah.
Just 4,000 years ago. You can try this yourself, everybody. I don't mean to be mean to trees, but get a sapling and put it underwater for a year. It will not survive in general, nor will its seeds. It just won't make it. So how could these trees be that old if the Earth is only 4,000 years old? Now, when we go to the Grand Canyon, which is an astonishing place, and I recommend to everybody in the world to someday visit the Grand Canyon, you find layer upon layer of ancient rocks. And if there was this enormous flood that you speak of, would there have been churning and bubbling and roiling? How would these things have settled out? Your claim that they settled out in an extraordinary short amount of time is, for me, not satisfactory. You can look at these rocks. You can look at rocks that are younger. You can go to seashores where there's sand. This is what geologists on the outside do, study the rate at which soil is deposited at the end of rivers and deltas. And we can see that it takes a long, long time for sediments to turn to stone. Also, in this picture, you can see where one type of sediment has intruded on another type. Now, if that was uniform, wouldn't we expect it all to be even without intrusion? Furthermore, you can find places in the Grand Canyon where you see an ancient riverbed on that side going to an ancient riverbed on that side, and the Colorado River has cut through it. And by the way, if this great flood drained through the Grand Canyon, wouldn't there have been a Grand Canyon on every continent? How could we not have Grand Canyons everywhere if this water drained away in this extraordinary short amount of time, 4,000 years? Now, when you look at these layers carefully...
He's got a point. If there was waters all over the globe, then there should be Grand Canyons everywhere. But they're not.
And like,
you find these...
also related to the layers he said earlier, like, okay, sure, Ken, there was a global flood, and you're saying the sediment should deposit, densest to lightest, like we can see in all water examples today. Then why do I have sand, mud, rock, sand, mud, sand, coral?
Yeah. Like, and why do the fossils not go heaviest to lightest?
Get back in the house,
why does it
coral.
go sort of simple trilobites and simple ocean fossils, and then to dinosaurs, which are heavy, and then back down to birds? Why? What? And then they sort of go, oh, but the birds were flying and stuff. Yeah, but you've got stuff like squirrels up the top as well.
Why do we have birds in the Jurassic with the dinosaurs and the sea reptiles and shells?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There's no bunny in the Cambrian.
There's no what, sorry?
There's no bunny in the Cambrian.
There's no bunny in the Cambrian. You heard it first. You can quote that. That's a quote from Dr.
I'm quoting from someone else, but...
Oh, really? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I know Dappers said it.
Okay.
At the past, you find...
Well, then you didn't hear it first. Okay, you heard it third or fourth or possibly even 70th.
Down low,
different dino.
There's rudimentary sea animals. Up above, you'll find the famous trilobites. Above that, you might find some clams, some oysters. And above that, you'll find some mammals. you never, ever find a higher animal mixed in with a lower one. You never find a lower one trying to swim its way to the higher one. If it all happened in such an extraordinary short amount of time, if this water drained away just like that, wouldn't we expect to see some turbulence? And by the way, anyone here, really, if you can find one example of that anywhere in the world, the scientists of the world challenge you. They would embrace you. You would be a hero. You would change the world. If you could find one example of that anywhere. People have looked and looked and looked. They've not found a single one. Now, here's an interesting thing. These are fossil skulls that people have found all around the world. It's by no means representative of all the fossil skulls that have been found, but these are all over the place. Now, if you were to look at these, I can assure you not any of them is a gorilla, right? If, as Mr. Ham and his associates claim, there was just man and then everybody else, there were just humans and all other species, where would you put modern humans among these skulls? How did all these skulls get all over the earth in these extraordinary fashion? Where would you put us? Well, I can tell you we are on there, and I encourage you, when you go home, to look it up. Now, one of the extraordinary claims associated with Mr. Ham's worldview is that this giant boat, very large wooden ship, went aground safely on a mountain in the Middle East, what we now call the Middle East. And so places like Australia are populated then by animals who somehow managed to get from the Middle East all the way to Australia in the last 4,000 years. Now, that to me is an extraordinary claim. We would expect then, somewhere between the Middle East and Australia, we would expect to find evidence of kangaroos. We would expect to find some fossils, some bones. In the last 4,000 years, somebody would have been hopping along there and died along the way, and we'd find them. And furthermore, there's a claim that there was a land bridge that allowed these animals to get from Asia all the way to the continent of Australia, and that land bridge has disappeared in the last 4,000 years. No navigator, no diver, no U.S. Navy submarine, no one's ever detected any evidence of this, let alone any fossils of kangaroos. So your expectation is not met. It doesn't seem to hold up. So let's see, if there are 4,000 years since Ken Ham's flood, and let's say, as he said...
I think the koala's a better example. Like, how did koalas that eat purely eucalyptus get all the way back to Australia on zero eucalyptus? Like, and did they have eucalyptus on the ark for the koalas? I don't understand that. Did they have bamboo for the giant pandas? Like, you know, I think it's a better example. And I think that somebody used the sloth, the giant sloth, as a good example. Like, at the rate that a giant sloth travels, how did it get back to South America? Like,
are you talking
it's still walking.
sloths?
Sorry?
Are you talking giant ground sloths or modern sloths?
No, modern sloth. Well, don't forget that, like, you know, all the modern animals were on the ark. So the three-toed sloth had to be on the ark, you know, the three-toed sloth. How did it get back to South America?
Where are all the dinosaur footprints leading out from the Middle East?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like, you don't even have to pick like a specific group in, say, Australia either. You don't have to pick kangaroos. You don't have to pick koalas. Nothing that lives in Australia. Well, okay, I won't say nothing. Most of everything that lives in Australia, you can't find remains of them anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that? Especially for the more rapidly producing species.
Yeah, and especially that the only place that you find monotremes are in Australia. That is the only place you'll find them.
Many times there are 7,000 kinds. Today, the very, very lowest estimate is that there are about 8.7 million species, but a much more reasonable estimate is it's 50 million or even 100 million. When you start counting viruses and the bacteria and all the beetles that must be extant in the tropical rainforest that we haven't found. So we'll take a number which I think is pretty reasonable, 16 million species today, okay? If these came from 7,000 kinds, let's say we have 7,000 subtracted from 15 million, that's 15,993. We have 4,000 years, we have 365 and a quarter days a year. We would expect to find 11 new species every day. So you go out into your yard, you wouldn't just find a different bird, a new bird. You find a different kind of bird, a whole new species of bird every day, a new species of fish, a new species of organism you can't see, and so on. I mean, this would be enormous news. The last 4,000 years, people would have seen these changes among us. So the Cincinnati Enquirer, I imagine, would carry a column right next to the weather report. Today's new species, and it would list these 11 every day. But we see no evidence of that. There's no evidence of these species. There just simply isn't enough time. Now, as you may know, I was graduated from engineering school, and I got a job at Boeing. I worked on 747s. Okay, everybody relax. I was very well supervised. Everything's fine. There's a tube in the 747. I kind of think it was my tube. But that aside, I traveled the highways of Washington State quite a bit. I was a young guy. I had a motorcycle. I used to go mountain climbing in Washington State, Oregon. And you can drive along and find these enormous boulders on top of the ground. Enormous rocks, huge, sitting on top of the ground. Now, out there in regular academic pursuits, regular geology.
Is this the Missoula flood?
Looks like a map of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Lake Missoula.
Yeah.
People have discovered that there used to be a lake in what is now Montana, which we charmingly refer to as Missoula. It's not there now.
Yeah. Cool. I see. I did listen, guys. I learned something. So, Bamesy, I listened. I did learn.
the evidence for it, of course, is, if I may, overwhelming. And so an ice dam would form at Lake Missoula, and once in a while it would break. It would build up and break. And there were multiple floods in my old state of Washington State. And just before we go on, let me just say, go Seahawks. That was very gratifying. Very gratifying for me. Anyway, you drive along the road, and there are these rocks. So if, as is asserted here at this facility, that the heavier rocks would sink to the bottom during a flood event, the big rocks, and especially their shape, instead of aerodynamic, the hydrodynamic, the water changing shape, as water flows past, you'd expect them to sink to the bottom. But here are these enormous rocks right on the surface, and there's no shortage of them. If you go driving in Washington State or Oregon, they're readily available. So how could those be there if the Earth is just 4,000 years old? How could they be there if this one flood caused that? Another remarkable thing I'd like everybody to consider.
There might be a way to explain that in geology.
Oh,
just because the big rocks would probably be more resistant than the surrounding soil, so they wouldn't be washed away as easily.
Okay.
That's not how they got there, but there would be a possibility for an explanation.
Yeah, but you'd expect to have like them having signs of that kind of thing happen.
Oh yeah, you would. I'm just saying that's an excuse they could use.
But don't give them any more excuses.
In this worldview is that somehow Noah and his family were able to build a wooden ship that would house 14,000 individuals. There's 7,000 kinds, and there's a boy and a girl for each one of those. So it's about 14,008 people. And these people were unskilled. As far as anybody knows, they were never built a wooden ship before. Furthermore, they had to get all...
No, in fact, Noah was described as a man of the land. He was a farmer. He was actually described in the Bible as a man of the land. So he definitely didn't have any shipbuilding expertise. They apologized for this by saying, hey, God gave him the necessary expertise. He designed it kind of thing. So it's like, all right, well, whatever. But he's got a point. That they'd never built a ship before.
Did God also inspire him to lay around drunk and naked yelling at his kids?
Yeah, apparently so.
The true way to parent.
I understand that Mr. Ham has some explanation.
Sorry?
Oh, the true way to parent.
Yeah.
For that, which I frankly find extraordinary, but this is the premise of the bit. And we can then run a test, a scientific test. People in the early 1900s built an extraordinary large wooden ship, the Wyoming. It was a 6-masted schooner, the largest one ever built. It had a motor on it for winching cables and stuff. But this boat had a great difficulty. It was not as big as the Titanic, but it was a very long ship. It would twist in the sea. It would twist this way, and this way. And in all that twisting, it leaked. It leaked like crazy. The crew could not keep the ship dry. And indeed, it eventually foundered and sank, loss of all 14 hands. So there were 14 crewmen aboard a ship built by very, very skilled shipwrights in New England. These guys were the best in the world at wooden shipbuilding. And they couldn't build a boat as big as the Ark is claimed to have been. Is that reasonable? Is that possible? That the best shipbuilders in the world couldn't do what 8 unskilled people, men and their wives, were able to do? If you visit the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., it's 163 acres. And they have 400 species. By the way, this picture that you're seeing was taken by spacecraft in space, orbiting the Earth. If you told my grandfather, let alone my father, that we had that capability, they would have been amazed. And that capability comes from a fundamental understanding of gravity, of material science, of physics, and life science, where you go looking. This place is often, as any zoo, is often deeply concerned and criticized for how it treats its animals. They have 400 species on 163 acres, 66 hectares. Is it reasonable that Noah and his colleagues, his family, were able to maintain 14,000 animals and themselves and feed them aboard a ship that was bigger than anyone's ever been able to build? Now, here's the thing. What we want in science...
Yeah, it's such a stupid story. Like, really. Like, 8 people taking care of that amount of animals is absurd. Like, just absurd. I think that, like, zookeepers, they have, like, a zookeeper per sort of 100 animals, I think.
Depends on the zoo.
Yeah, it depends on the zoo, but I think that was a very generous estimate kind of thing. Like if you were running, that's the maximum anybody could possibly take care of under any circumstances kind of thing. And the Ark, it works out to, 1,000 something animals per person. Like it's absurd.
And didn't someone do the math where like they would have suffocated from the methane?
Yeah.
Like, also, Ember, you are muted.
You're still muted. So
yeah,
on the
it took me a minute.
Yeah, they would have choked to death on the methane.
Several people have done that.
Piling up.
Yeah. Oh, but don't forget, Hoban's got an answer for that. Like, they had a moon pool on an Ark that they just crapped into.
Is his the moon pool or is his the hibernation idea?
His was the moon pool, definitely. Because that, like, the idea of a moon pool on a wooden ship is so absurd. It beggars belief. Because on a metal ship, you can do that. But you can't do that on a wooden ship. Like, that isn't something you can do.
I mean,
it's such a silly idea.
If God gave him the plans for how to build this ridiculous vessel, why not just give him the plans for indoor plumbing? And in fact, teach the giraffes how to use a toilet. Why not?
Sure. I mean, while we're making crap up, we might as well just go hog wild.
Exactly.
Like, let's go. Yeah.
Also, Joel Hadaway. Yeah, you're correct. Noah's flood was the first story I started to question. I was like, "Hey, Grandma, this doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, it's certainly one that you really have to sit back and go, really.
Science as practiced out on the outside is an ability to predict. We want to have a natural law that is so obvious and clear, so well understood, that we can make predictions about what will happen. We can predict that we can put a spacecraft in orbit and take a picture of Washington, D.C. We can predict that if we provide this much room for an elephant, it will live healthily for a certain amount of time. So I'll give you an example. In the explanation provided by traditional science of how we came to be, we find, as Mr. Ham alluded to many times in his recent remarks,
look. Okay, so I've got no problem with it
Tiktaalik?
being an allegorical summation, but there's no reason to if you want to say, hey, it was a local flood and that it was an embellished tale about I've got no problem with that. That's fine. It's just it's not a story that's true or correct. And then the problem comes, well, how much of it is true? Why should we believe any of it if it's obviously allegorical? We shouldn't. It's just a story.
Yeah, like Ken himself
Also, is
likes
he about
to say.
to bring up Tiktaalik? I haven't watched this in a while.
If involved here.
I would love for him to bring up Tiktaalik.
Well, there's the lungfish. So that's, yeah.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, Tiktaalik, one of my favorite fossils ever. Just, the whole story is amazing. I love it.
Yep.
Find a sequence of animals in what generally is called the fossil record. This would be to say, when we look at the layers that you would find in Kentucky, you look at them carefully, you find a sequence of animals, a succession. And as one might expect, when you're looking at old records, there's some pieces seem to be missing, a gap. So scientists got to thinking about this. They're lungfish that jump from pond to pond in Florida and end up in people's swimming pools, and they're amphibians, frogs and toads, croaking and carrying on. And so people wondered if there wasn't a fossil or an organism, an animal that had lived, that had characteristics of both. People over the years had found that in Canada, there was clearly a fossil marsh, a place that used to be a swamp.
Yeah, it doesn't Ken Ham look really uncomfortable right now? It's good to see. Like, he's really squirming a little bit.
It dried out. And they found all kinds of happy swamp fossils there, ferns, so on, and organisms, animals, fish that were recognized. And people realized that if this, with the age of the rocks there, as computed by traditional scientists, with the age of the rocks there, this would be a reasonable place to look for an animal, a fossil of an animal that lived there. And indeed, scientists found it. Tiktaalik, this fish lizard guy. And they found several specimens. This wasn't one individual. In other words, they made a prediction that this animal would be found, and it was found. So far, Mr. Ham and his worldview, the Ken Ham creation model, does not have this capability. It cannot make predictions and show results. Here's an extraordinary one that...
What's up?
Oh, I just said yay.
Yay!
I find remarkable. There are certain fish, the top minnows, that have the remarkable ability to have sex with other fish, traditional fish sex, and they can have sex with themselves. Now, one of the old questions in life science, everybody, one of the old sort of chin strokers, is why does any organism, whether you're an ash tree, a sea jelly, a squid, a marmot, why does anybody have sex? I mean, there are more bacteria in your tummy right now than there are humans on Earth. And bacteria don't bother with that, man. They like split themselves in half. They got new bacteria. Like, let's get her done. Let's go. But why does think of all the trouble a rose bush goes to make a flower and the thorns and the bees swimming, flying around, interacting. Why does anybody bother with all that? And the answer seems to be your enemies. And your enemies are not lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, no. Your enemies are germs and parasites. That's what's going to get you. Germs and parasites. My first cousin's son died tragically from essentially the flu. This is not some story I heard of. It's my first cousin once removed. Because apparently the virus had the right genes to attack his genes. So when you have sex, you have a new set of genes, you have a new mixture. So people study these top minnows.
Yeah, it's like encrypting your genetics against these viruses and these things. It's like mixing it up so they can't attack you. It's yeah.
Also as a side effect of increasing mutation rates, which is generally good for the population as a whole.
And they found that the ones who reproduce sexually had fewer parasites than the ones that reproduce on their own. This black spot disease. Wait, there's more. In these populations, with flooding and so on, with river ponds get isolated and they dry up and the river flows again, in between, some of the fish will have sex with other fish sometimes, and they'll have sex on their own, what's called asexually. And those fish, the ones that are in between, sometimes this, sometimes that, they have an intermediate number of infections. In other words, the explanation provided by evolution made a prediction. And the prediction's extraordinary and subtle, but there it is. How else would you explain it? And to Mr. Ham and his followers, I say this is something that we in science want. We want the ability to predict. And your assertion that there's some difference between the natural laws that I use to observe the world today and the natural laws that existed 4,000 years ago is extraordinary and unsettling. I travel around. I have a great many family members in Danville, Virginia, one of the U.S.'s most livable cities. It's lovely. And I was driving along, and there was a sign in front of a church, Big Bang Theory, you got to be kidding me, God. Now, everybody, why would someone at the church, a pastor, for example, put that sign up unless he or she didn't believe that the Big Bang was a real thing? I just want to review briefly with everybody why we accept, in the outside world, why we accept the Big Bang.
In the outside world, I've got to make that clear. Outside of this sort of congregation of people that sort of besides deniers.
Actually, I'm glad he pointed that out because it's a historical snapshot from 2014. There were churches with signs out there saying, Big Bang, you got to be kidding me. Because today, almost every single apologist out there goes, oh, well, Big Bang, the churches loved it from the get-go because obviously it's Genesis in action, but the evolutionists, they hate it because now the universe had a beginning. When in fact, as recently as 10 years ago, there were still churches that were, no, this science stuff is nonsense.
I don't think every apologist is like that. I think the young Earth creationists are still sort of Big Bang never happened kind of thing. I mean, my debate with T-Rock, he was sort of saying the Earth was created before the universe. So, go figure that one out.
It's a neat trick.
Yeah. That was funny. I put up this like, it was really badly done, but I put up this very short clip of him saying in one part of the debate, nothing I have said tonight violates any laws of physics known by physicists, and then it switches to the Earth was created before the universe. Then I had the what's that music, that show that with the old guy and oh god, I've had a total mental blank.
If I ever get to debate
Someone help
T-Rock,
help me. I'm broken. Help me.
Huh?
We broke Mark.
No. I just can't remember the name of that show, and it's like
modern day debate.
No. I mean that is the other thing. It's like that Jewish old guy and his like
Maury.
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's
thank you so much, Laura. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Thank you so much. I thank you. No, Laura's right. It's Curb Your Enthusiasm. We're on the same page, Laura. You and me. Yep. You're not aware of Curb Your Enthusiasm? I mean, I don't watch it myself, but it's got a very distinctive theme song.
Yeah, I've never seen. Although people have told me I should watch it.
Okay.
I'd just rather spend my time on this kind of thing.
I probably just should have shown the clip, but never mind. Pushing on.
Edwin Hubble. Oh, sorry. There you go. You got to be kidding me, God. Edwin Hubble was sitting at Mount Wilson, which is up from Pasadena, California. On a clear day, you can look down and see where the Rose Parade goes. It's that close to civilization. But even in the early 1900s, the people who selected this site for astronomy picked an excellent site. The clouds and smog are below you. And Edwin Hubble sat there at this very big telescope night after night studying the heavens. And he found that the stars are moving apart. The stars are moving apart. And he wasn't sure why, but it was clear that the stars are moving farther and farther apart all the time. So people talked about it for a couple decades. And then eventually another astronomer, almost a couple decades, another astronomer, Fred Hoyle, just remarked, well, it was like there was a big bang. There was an explosion. This is to say, since everything's moving apart, it's very reasonable that at one time they were all together. And there's a place from whence these things expanded. And it was a remarkable insight. But people went still questioning it for decades. Conventional scientists questioning it for decades. These two researchers wanted to listen for radio signals from space, radio astronomy. And this is, while we have visible light for our eyes, there's a whole other bunch of waves of light that are much longer. The microwaves in your oven are about that long. The radar at the airport is about that long. Your FM radio signals about like this. AM radio signals are kill me. There's several soccer fields. They went out, and there was this hiss, this tss, all the time that wouldn't go away. And they thought, oh, there's some loose connector. They plugged in the connector. They re-screwed.
This is a great story too. This is an amazing story, and it's absolutely true. They were trying to get rid of this background noise. Fantastic story. Like A's Philosophy, Krish, if you haven't heard this story, definitely listen, because this just shows you a testable prediction that was absolutely fantastic.
They made it tight. They turned it this way. The hiss was still there. They heard that way. This is still there. They thought it was pigeon droppings that had affected the reception of this horn, it's called. This thing is still there. It's in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. It's a National Historic Site. And Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson had found this cosmic background sound that was predicted by astronomers. Astronomers running the numbers, doing math, predicted that in the cosmos would be left over this echo, this energy from the Big Bang that would be detectable. And they detected it. We built the Cosmic Observatory for background.
Yeah, so they predicted, astronomers working in a different section said, hey, if there is a Big Bang, there will be this background noise, this radiation left over from that release of energy. But the guys in the observatory he's talking about didn't know that. And they were trying to get rid of it because it was hampering their ability to hear signals out in the universe. So they were cleaning their instruments. They were, checking every single input they had. They were basically trying to get rid of this sound. And they didn't realize they had found exactly the prediction these people over there had predicted, that somebody else had predicted. They'd found it and not realized it. They had no idea. The horrible thing is the people who found it that had no idea are the ones that got the Nobel for it. The people that actually theorized it and basically said, yes, we should find that. They didn't get the Nobel for it, which is kind of weird, So, yeah, there you go.
Missions, the Kobe spacecraft, and it matched exactly the astronomers' predictions. You got to respect that. It's a wonderful thing. Now, along that line is some interest in the age of the Earth. Right now, it's generally agreed that the Big Bang happened 13.7 billion years ago. What we can do on Earth, these elements that we all know on the periodic table of chemicals, even ones we don't know, are created when stars explode. And I look like nobody, but I attended a lecture by Hans Bethe, who won a Nobel Prize for discovering the process by which stars create all these elements. The one that interests me especially is our good friends rubidium and strontium. Rubidium becomes strontium spontaneously. It's an interesting thing to me. A neutron becomes a proton, and it goes up the periodic table. When lava comes out of the ground, molten lava, and it freezes, turns to rock, when the melt solidifies or crystallizes, it locks the rubidium and strontium in place. And so by careful assay, by being diligent, you can tell when the rock froze. You can tell how old the rubidium and strontium are, and you can get an age for the Earth. When that stuff falls on fossils, you can get a very good idea of how old the fossils are. I encourage you all to go to Nebraska, go to Ashfall State Park, and see the astonishing fossils. It looks like a Hollywood movie. There are rhinoceroses, there are three-toed horses in Nebraska. None of those animals are extant today, and they were buried catastrophically by a volcano in what is now Idaho. It's now Yellowstone National Park. It's called the hotspot. People call it super volcano, and it's a remarkable thing. Apparently, as I can tell you, as a Northwesterner around for Mount St. Helens, full disclosure, I'm on the Mount St. Helens board. When it goes off, it gives out a great deal of gas that's toxic and knocks these animals out. Looking for relief, they go to a watering hole, and then when the ash comes, they're all buried. It's an extraordinary place. Now, if in the bad old days you had heart problems, they would right away cut you open.
It's a little more grim than that. A lot of them also would have drank water contaminated with volcanic ash.
Right.
Which is basically just microscopic shards of glass.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Ouch.
Bad times.
Yeah, and all of this is the sort of thing. So radioactive decay is so regular that we can make the most accurate clocks with it, like insanely accurate. The whole point is you have to argue that radioactive decay worked differently in the past than it does now. And we've got no evidence to suggest that. Like, how could that possibly happen? I don't understand that argument. And that's basically what sort of Ken Ham was angling towards. Because the inconvenience of things working today as they worked before, I'm going to believe they're different. Like, Ken Ham.
Show the evidence.
Yeah, show the evidence of that.
On rubidium to look at the inside of your heart without cutting you open. Now, my Kentucky friends, I want you to consider this. Right now, there is no place in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to get a degree in this kind of nuclear medicine, this kind of drugs associated with that. I hope you find that troubling. I hope you're concerned about that. You want scientifically literate students in your Commonwealth for a better tomorrow for everybody. You can't get this here. You have to go out of state. Now, as far as the distance to stars, understand this is very well understood. It's February. We look at a star in February, we measure an angle to it, we wait 6 months, we look at that same star again, and we measure that angle. It's the same way carpenters built this building. It's the same way surveyors surveyed the land that we're standing on. And so by measuring the distance to a star, you can figure out how far away it is, that star, and then the stars beyond it, and the stars beyond that. There are billions of stars, more than 6,000 light years from here. A light year is a unit of distance, not a unit of time. There are billions of stars. Mr. Ham, how could there be billions of stars more distant than 6,000 years if the world's only 6,000 years old? It's an extraordinary claim. There's another astronomer, Adolf Kittel, who remarked first about the reasonable man. Is it reasonable that we have ice older by a factor of 100 than you claim the Earth is? We have trees that have more tree rings than the Earth is old. That we have rocks with rubidium and strontium and uranium and potassium argon dating that are far, far, far older than you claim the Earth is. Could anybody have built an ark that would sustain better than any ark anybody was able to build on the Earth? So if you're asking me, and I got the impression you were, is Ken Ham's creation model viable? I say no, absolutely not. And one last thing. You may not know that in the U.S. Constitution, from the Founding Fathers, is the sentence to promote the progress of science and useful arts. Kentucky voters who might be watching online in places like Texas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Kansas. Please, you don't want to raise a generation of science students who don't understand how we know our place in the cosmos, our place in space, who don't understand natural law. We need to innovate to keep the United States where it is in the world. Thank you very much.
Whoa, yeah. Nye is just an amazing communicator because he's outlined not only how we know everything that we know, how we came to these conclusions, but also what that does for us. Like, what's the benefit of it? And it's, all of the technology we have, all of the things. And he points out that, hey, because of was it Nebraska that it's in? I think he said Nebraska. Whatever state he's in, they don't like people.
Ashfall.
Well, because they're in Nebraska.
Sorry, you were talking about something different. Sorry.
The state that he's in right now,
Kentucky.
Kentucky, sorry. Yes, Kentucky. I'm sorry, I'm Australian. Forgive me. We've
How
only
dare
got
you.
like 7 states to remember, so most of those are territories anyway. So, but like he sort of pointed out that because they don't like people studying these radioactive substances, radiometric dating and things, that they have nobody proficient in using the radioactive substances that they use to detect heart problems and things like that. You have to go out of state. Think about that. Like, if you're in your country and you've outlawed kind of the science that you don't like, then unintentionally you're actually affecting people's lives. This is a problem, right? So you can have your religious beliefs, but up until the point where they're actively harming your population by using it, and that's an example of how you can, by denying the science, harm your population. And in this case, it's people in Kentucky can't get the kind of medicine that they need because nobody's proficient in it, because nobody's allowed to study something that they deem to be, false, basically. It's not good. It's not good, America. It's not good. So, yeah.
I agree. Please help.
Yeah,
Send help. Send emus.
Send emus. Emus love science.
Can I have an emu as my local governor, please?
I think
That would be an improvement, wouldn't it?
I think
yes.
Aaron Ra keeps emus, to be honest with you. I think he started
He used to have a pet emu.
He used to have a pet emu, okay.
Yeah, I think they had to give it away to a zoo or something.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, there's people that have emus, so yeah. Yep. Well,
Yeah,
I think I might stop it there.
Them.
I'll probably do a part 2, but we are going way long, so I thank you so much. But I'll stop it there and see if a part 2's in the work. I might, if you guys aren't up for it, I'll do it alone because I really want to do this one. But that's okay. It's all good. I think that Ken Ham, I forgot how mad he makes me with his, what he says. Like seriously. But yeah. Here's the thing. Ken Ham is not presenting any evidence for his model, and all he's doing is trying to pick holes in the other one, while Bill Nye is actually presenting how we know stuff in our model and pointing out that the other one has no evidence whatsoever. So I think that Nye, he's actually debating so well. I love Nye. He's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Terry,
yeah. He's adding an extra thread that I don't even think is technically necessary, but really makes his argument much stronger. That application. This is why you want better science.
Yep, relating it to the audience. That is big.
What a guy! Yeah, absolutely. But I want to thank you, Ember, and Dr. Dino, of course. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I put your channels in the description. I think I did. Yes, I did.
You can edit it later if you need to.
No. I got it. I threw them in there just before we started.
Speaking of editing things, the debate, the Mormon debate you had, I think you misspelled the title of it yesterday.
I think Modern Day Debate misspelled the title. I thought I corrected it. Maybe I just copied and pasted and didn't think about it. Maybe that's embarrassing.
Is the Book of Mormon scientific?
Yeah, that's how they spelt it. That's how they spelt it on Modern Day Debate. I obviously just copied and pasted it. Hold on. I'm sorry.
How dare you not spell check Ryan?
Well,
yeah.
Y'all have any plans today or tomorrow?
There's just a couple of things I got to do around the house this Arvo and go out and do some shopping because my cupboards look like an arid desert with nothing in them. They look like the outback basically. So, nice. Yeah, I got to do that. But that's okay. There's just some home stuff today. As usual for a Sunday. But that's about all. I might do a member-only stream for my conversationalists where I'm playing Medieval Dynasty and peasanting real hard.
Yeah, I gotta start grabbing some people with some colorful names so I can start doing some members-only stuff too.
Well, I know I recently joined your little Ember house.
Sweet.
Because yeah. So now I can start throwing silly emojis in there.
Yeah, I only discovered after I turned the pesky thing on that you can only have 4 emojis to start, and then
Correct,
you
yes.
unlock additional emojis as your membership goes up. And to get all the emojis that I pre-designed, to get all of them out, I need 1,600 channel members. I'm like, damn it,
It'll
YouTube.
Well, just do the best ones, I guess, and then
I'm going to make that a member's perk. Is whenever a new emoji slot unlocks, the members get to vote on which emoji gets added next.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love polls. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me. And Dr. Dino, what do you have going on? What? I think we're doing something on your channel in a little bit, like next week.
This Monday, if you live in the U.S., or Tuesday, if you live in Aussie land, we will be reviewing a quote-unquote documentary hosted by Kurt Wise, who lies about paleontology. Actually, the final thumbnail is in our Discord if you want to show it, Mark. Yeah,
okay.
It turned out kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our Discord.
Damn it, there's Beamsy's cheesy bread again.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there's like actual regular content on Dr. Dino's channel now too, so everybody should definitely go check that out.
Hopefully,
and come hang out with us on Monday.
So that's the. Am I still sharing? Yeah, I am. Okay,
you are sharing. It's pretty zoomed out though.
You're killing me.
It must be shown in all its glory. You did this, Beamsy.
Okay, Beamsy. Okay, blame Beamsy for that one, sure.
Damn it, Beamsy.
We're at 1:15:30. Okay, I'll just jot that down. But thank you so much for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of the audience for being here. Yeah, you guys made this really fun. I love your comments. It's been fantastic. Make sure you do like, share, subscribe. Get this out there because, as I said, this channel gives the old proverbial flying elbow to mysticism, superstition, and religion. And I do want to thank my channel members. You're all so great. I really appreciate your support. Channel membership is available for perks such as emojis at the higher levels. You can get member-only streams of me gaming. And at the very highest level, you can actually join in yourself. And when I run games, you can play with Mark Reed. So don't forget to be kind to each other and to yourself. Most important of all. You know what? I did thank myself for doing something the other day. How often do you thank yourself for doing things? Something that occurred to me, right? Like you do the dishes. How often do you actually go, thank you for doing that? You'll thank someone else. Why don't you thank yourself? It's a good question, right?
That is it. Yeah, I'm it's not super deep, but I'm still a little shook. I'm like, you have a point.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. And I will do a part 2 to this, whether, Ember and Dino want to join in, that's fine. If not, that's cool too. I definitely will, because I want to finish this one off. This is like a bugbear now. Can ham.
Hell yeah.